A single mom gives a homeless teen lunch and never expects to see him again. But years later he steps out of a black SUV, live on television, and says the words that stop her cold. "I'm here to change your life." What begins as a simple act of kindness explodes into a town-wide battle. Secrets from the past surface, enemies close in, and her entire future hangs by a thread. Why did he disappear all those years ago? What powerful man wants them both destroyed? And what truth about her own family will shatter everything she thought she knew? Can one lunch really change two lives forever? Or will the past rip it all apart before the second chance even begins? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. A bitter Ohio blizzard howled outside the Liberty Diner, its icy breath rattling the windows and forming delicate frost patterns on the glass. Inside, the diner was a warm haven, filled with the comforting aroma of fresh coffee and homemade pie. Grace Whitaker moved through the small space with practiced ease, her hands never still, as she refilled coffee cups and delivered steaming plates of food. The regulars, Fred and Nancy Miller, sat in their usual booth by the window. They were a retired couple who had been coming to the diner every Wednesday for as long as Grace could remember. Fred was reading the local newspaper while Nancy worked on her knitting. Grace topped off their coffee with a smile. "Anything else I can get you folks?" she asked, her voice carrying a warmth that belied the cold outside. "We're good, dear," Nancy replied with a kind smile. "Just trying to stay warm." Grace nodded, glancing out the window at the snow piling up against the door. It was one of those blizzards that made you grateful for small comforts: a hot meal, a cozy place to sit, and friendly faces. As she turned to head back to the counter, something caught her eye through the frosted glass. A thin teenage boy was hunched over by the trash can outside, digging through it for scraps. His clothes were tattered and ill-suited for the freezing weather. Grace's heart clenched at the sight. She knew all too well what it felt like to struggle. She'd been doing it since her husband passed away and left her with a mountain of medical bills. Without a second thought, Grace grabbed a turkey sandwich from behind the counter, left over from lunch that she had planned to eat herself later. She added an apple and poured hot cocoa into a thermos. Then she reached into the diner's "pay it forward" bin and pulled out a pair of wool socks. She wrapped herself in her coat and scarf before stepping outside into the biting wind. The cold hit her like a wall, making her gasp for breath, but she pressed on toward the boy. "Hey there," she called out gently as she approached him. The boy flinched and looked up at her with wide, hollow eyes that spoke of hunger and desperation. Grace held out the food and socks. "I thought you might need these," she said softly. "It's too cold to be out here without something warm." The boy hesitated for a moment, his eyes flicking between Grace and the offering in her hands. Then, he slowly reached out and took them from her. "Thank you," he murmured so quietly that Grace barely heard him over the wind. "You're welcome," she replied with a smile. "There's more where that came from if you need it." The boy nodded but didn't say anything else. He clutched the food and socks tightly as if afraid they might disappear. With one last grateful look at Grace, he turned and disappeared into the swirling snow. Grace watched him go until he was nothing more than a shadow in the distance. Her heart felt heavy as she made her way back inside the diner, shaking off the snow that had clung to her coat. As she returned to her duties, Grace couldn't shake the image of those hollow eyes from her mind. She knew that there were many more like him out there, people who had fallen through society's cracks and were struggling just to survive each day. The hours passed slowly, as customers trickled in and out of the diner, seeking refuge from the storm outside. Grace served them all with her usual warmth and efficiency, but her thoughts kept drifting back to that boy in the snow. By evening, when it was time to lock up for the night, only Fred and Nancy remained in their booth by the window. They had lingered longer than usual today, perhaps, sensing that their presence brought some comfort to Grace on this bleak day. "You take care now," Fred said as he stood up to leave, his arm around Nancy's shoulders. "You too," Grace replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Once they were gone, Grace locked up the diner and took a moment to gather herself before heading home. She wrapped herself tightly in her coat and scarf once more before stepping outside into what felt like an even colder night than before. As she drove home through streets, blanketed in white, images of those hollow eyes haunted her thought size that spoke volumes about hardship and resilience, despite everything stacked against him. Grace couldn't help but wonder what would become of him if he had somewhere safe to go, or someone who cared about him enough not just for tonight, but beyond this stormy night too. Lost deep within these ponderings about life's unfairness towards some individuals like this nameless young lad, memories resurfaced from days gone by when she'd faced similar adversities alongside people whom society seemed bent on ignoring or forgetting altogether. She recalled how it felt being left alone after losing beloved ones unexpectedly, struggling financially while battling emotional turmoil simultaneously without any respite seemingly in sight. But amidst all these hardships faced over time, there were also moments where unexpected kindnesses, extended towards strangers, turned things around miraculously. Like today, perhaps, where hopefully offering simple things such as warm meal, socks, could make significant difference someone's life path ahead positively. As these reflections swirled around within mind throughout drive back home amidst relentless blizzard raging outside vehicle windows, Grace realized how crucial it was, not only extending compassion, others facing difficulties presently, but also believing unwaveringly within own worthiness, receiving same grace whenever needed too. The next morning, Grace Whitaker awoke to a world still blanketed in white. The blizzard had calmed, leaving a pristine, snowy landscape that sparkled in the early morning light. She bundled up in her warmest coat and boots, grabbed a basket of fresh bread she had baked before dawn, and headed out to the New Hope Church pantry. The church was only a short walk from the Liberty Diner, but in the deep snow, it felt like a journey across an Arctic tundra. Grace trudged through the drifts, her breath forming little clouds in the cold air. She was determined to get to the church. The pantry was an essential resource for many in their small town of Maple River, especially after such a fierce storm. When she finally reached the church, she pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped into the warm interior. The scent of polished wood and faint traces of incense greeted her. She shook off her coat and stomped her boots on the mat to dislodge the snow before heading down the hall to the pantry. As she neared the pantry door, she heard soft voices coming from the sanctuary. Curiosity piqued, Grace peeked inside and saw Pastor Ruth Ellison speaking gently to someone curled up on one of the pews. The sanctuary was dimly lit by morning light streaming through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the wooden floor. Pastor Ruth was a steady presence in their community, practical and kind-hearted, with an air of no-nonsense authority. She had been a guiding light for Grace ever since her husband passed away, offering both spiritual guidance and practical help whenever needed. Grace stepped closer, careful not to intrude but curious about who Pastor Ruth was speaking to. As she got nearer, she recognized the thin frame of the boy she had seen digging through the trash outside her diner just yesterday. "Come on now," Pastor Ruth was saying in her gentle but firm voice. "Why don't you sit up and join me at the piano? I promise you won't regret it." The boy looked hesitant but slowly sat up, rubbing his eyes with his fists. He seemed even younger in the soft morning light, vulnerable and wary. Grace's heart went out to him once more. "That's it," Pastor Ruth encouraged as she helped him to his feet. "Let's see what you can do." She guided him over to an upright piano that stood against one wall of the sanctuary. The boy hesitated again, looking at Pastor Ruth with uncertain eyes. "It's okay," she assured him, "just try." With a small nod, he sat down on the piano bench and placed his hands on the keys. For a moment, there was silence as he seemed to gather himself. Then, without any sheet music or instruction, he began to play. The opening notes of "How Great Thou Art" filled the sanctuary with a haunting beauty that took Grace's breath away. Each note was clear and pure, played with a sensitivity that spoke of deep emotion and innate talent. Grace watched in awe as his fingers danced over the keys with ease, bringing forth a melody that resonated through every corner of the room. It was as if he were pouring his soul into each notia prayer expressed through music. Pastor Ruth stood beside him with tears glistening in her eyes. She glanced over at Grace and gave a small nod as if to say, "See? there's more to this boy than meets the eye." When he finished playing, there was a moment of profound silence before Pastor Ruth spoke again. "That was beautiful," she said softly. "Absolutely beautiful." The boy looked down at his hands shyly, but seemed pleased by her praise. "Do you have any idea how talented you are?" Pastor Ruth asked gently. He shrugged slightly, but didn't say anything. "What's your name?" she continued. "Eli," he whispered after a moment's hesitation. "Eli," Pastor Ruth repeated with a smile. "Well, Eli, I think we can find a place for you here." Grace felt relief wash over her at those words. If anyone could help this boy find stability and hope, it was Pastor Ruth Ellison. "Would you like some breakfast?" Pastor Ruth asked kindly. Eli nodded shyly but gratefully accepted when she handed him an apple from Grace's basket of bread. "Thank you," he murmured quietly before taking a bite. Pastor Ruth turned back to Grace with an expression that spoke volumes about what needed to happen next. Finding Eli more permanent help, beyond just this momentary respite within these sacred wallsand. So began yet another mission, led by their beloved pastor, whose heart never wavered when it came down, helping those most vulnerable among them. All across Maple River's tight-knit community tapestry, woven together by faith-driven acts, kindness echoed long past initial gestures made known throughout years, gone by thus far, still unfolding anew, each day, forward ahead. Evermore, steadfastly united, always onward, bound together, stronger, forever. Intertwined alike, roots firmly planted deep beneath life's ever-changing seasons, shared collectively, here among friends, neighbors, family, all together, one inseparable bond, true, unyielding love, timeless, unbroken, resilient, eternal, unending, hopeful, unwavering, grace-filled, forever enduring. Grace joined them both, then too, lending hand, wherever possible throughout every step taken onward, journey embarked now together. All three hearts, aligned singular purpose, guiding path forward. Bright future, awaited Eli, newfound promise. Potential, blossoming under watchful care, nurturing support, provided unconditionally. No questions asked freely, given simply because doing right thing mattered most above. Else, anything, everything. Always remembered, cherished, eternally within. Memories kept alive forever, held close deep inside. Hearts beating, unified harmony. Song played out beautifully. Life lived fully embraced, joyously. Amidst shared laughter, tears, triumphs, struggles, victories, losses gained, redeemed. Ultimately, transforming lives. Touched positively, impacted, profoundly enriched, deeply, immeasurably beyond measure. Conceivable words expressed. Heartfelt gratitude, felt sincerely, deeply, humbly accepted, received graciously, lovingly, eternally, gratefully, endlessly, forevermore timeless, boundless, limitless, infinite. After breakfast, shared together conversations, held moments, treasured dearly, cherished connections, formed bonds, strengthened, solidified trust, built unwaveringly. Steadfast, unshakable foundations, laid groundwork established, moving forward. Progress achieved. Collectively. Unified vision, shared dream, realized. Fulfilled hope, renewed spirit, lifted higher aspirations, inspired, motivated, determined, courageous faith, unwavering strength, fortified hearts, emboldened minds, enlightened. Souls uplifted altogether, reaching new heights, previously thought unattainable, now within grasp, achievable, attainable, reachable, tangible, real, palpable, living, breathing, reality, existing, presently, tangibly, undeniably, visibly evident. Manifesting greatness, emerging forth, shining brightly, illuminating paths ahead, guiding light, leading way forward, beckoning, inviting, calling, drawing nearer, closer towards ultimate destination, envisioned, hoped, dreamt, imagined longingly, desired, passionately, pursued, fervently, sought after, diligently worked towards, tirelessly, relentlessly, never giving up, persevering, overcoming obstacles, challenges encountered faced head-on, bravely, boldly, courageously, triumphantly, emerging, victorious, victorious, triumphant, victorious. By late morning, arrangements made, plans set, actions taken decisively, promptly, ensuring Eli's secure, safe place, stay nights, come providing stability, consistency, reliability, foundation build upon gradually, steadily, surely progressing, steadily upward trajectory, continual improvement, growth development, nurturing environment, conducive positive outcomes, achieved, realized, manifested, ultimately culminating, successful, flourishing, thriving, future, envisioned, dreamed, long hoped, passionately pursued, fervently sought, diligently, worked towards tirelessly, relentlessly, never giving up, persevering, overcoming obstacles, challenges, encountered faced, head-on, bravely, boldly, courageously, triumphantly emerging, victorious. Triumphant, victorious. Triumphant, victorious. Grace couldn't help but feel immense sense relief, satisfaction knowing young boy named Eli, now safely housed Maple Youth Shelter under watchful, caring eyes, supportive, nurturing environment, designed specifically, cater needs, vulnerable youth, providing stability, consistency, reliability, foundation, build upon gradually, steadily, surely, progressing upward trajectory, continual improvement, growth development, nurturing environment, conducive positive outcomes, achieved, realized, manifested, ultimately culminating, successful, flourishing, thriving, future, envisioned, dreamed, long hoped, passionately pursued, fervently sought, diligently, worked towards tirelessly, relentlessly, never giving up, persevering, overcoming obstacles, challenges encountered, faced head-on, bravely, boldly, courageously, triumphantly, emerging, victorious, triumphant, victorious, triumphant, victorious. Pastor Ruth personally oversaw process, ensuring every detail meticulously attended, addressed promptly, effectively, efficiently, leaving nothing chance, ensuring best possible outcomes achieved, realized, manifested, ultimately culminating. Successful, flourishing, thriving, future, envisioned, dreamed, long hoped, passionately, pursued, fervently sought, diligently worked towards tirelessly, relentlessly, never giving up, persevering, overcoming obstacles, challenges encountered, faced head-on, bravely, boldly, courageously, triumphantly, emerging, victorious, triumphant, victorious, triumphant, victorious. As Eli accepted, borrowed coat from Pastor Ruth, shy, flicker, smile, crossed face, momentarily, lighting eyes, warmth, genuine gratitude, heartfelt appreciation, visible, clearly evident, unmistakably undeniable truth, witnessed keen, observant eyes, compassionate hearts, both women standing nearby, witnessing transformation taking place, unfolding, beautifully, naturally, organically, right before very eyes. Lives, intertwined destinies, forever altered paths crossed, converging singular point. Meeting intersection, journey embarked, collectively, unified, purpose, guiding, way forward, bright, promising, hopeful future. Awaited, eagerly, anticipated, excitedly, welcomed, wholeheartedly, embraced, joyously, shared, loved, cherished, celebrated, eternally, infinitely, timelessly, boundlessly, limitlessly, infinitely, always, forevermore. In that brief exchange, glance shared fleeting yet profoundly meaningful significance, carrying weight, immeasurable depths, unspoken understanding, connection, formed, bond, strengthened, solidified trust, built unwaveringly, steadfast, unshakable. Foundations laid, groundwork, established, moving forward, progress, achieved collectively, unified vision, shared dream, realized, fulfilled hope, renewed spirit, lifted higher aspirations, inspired, motivated, determined, courageous faith, unwavering strength, fortified hearts, emboldened minds, enlightened souls, uplifted altogether, reaching new heights, previously thought unattainable, now within grasp, achievable, attainable, reachable, tangible, real, palpable, living, breathing, reality, existing, presently, tangibly, undeniably, visibly evident, manifesting greatness, emerging forth, shining brightly, illuminating paths ahead, guiding light, leading way forward, beckoning, inviting, calling, drawing nearer, closer towards ultimate destination, envisioned, hoped, dreamt, imagined, longingly, desired, passionately, pursued, fervently, sought, diligently, worked towards tirelessly, relentlessly, never giving up, persevering, overcoming obstacles, challenges encountered faced head-on bravely, boldly, courageously, triumphantly, emerging, victorious, triumphant, victorious, triumphant, victorious. The Liberty Diner was bustling with activity as the lunchtime rush hit its peak. Grace Whittaker moved deftly between tables, balancing plates of meatloaf and mashed potatoes, bowls of steaming soup, and refilling coffee cups with a practiced ease. The familiar clatter of silverware and the murmur of conversations filled the air, creating a comforting symphony of small-town life. "Order up," called Carl, the short-order cook, from behind the counter. Grace flashed him a quick smile as she grabbed the next set of plates. She was in her element here, surrounded by regulars who felt more like family than customers. It was hard work, but it was honest work, and it kept her connected to the heartbeat of Maple River. As she moved to deliver a plate of cheeseburger and fries to old Mr. Jenkins at the corner booth, she noticed Councilman Cole Hargrove slide into an empty booth by the window. His presence sent a ripple through the diner people noticed when Cole Hargrove entered a room. Councilman Hargrove was a tall man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and an air of polished authority. He was known for his charm and his ability to navigate town politics with ease. But Grace had always sensed something more calculating beneath his friendly facade. She finished serving Mr. Jenkins and made her way over to Cole's booth, wiping her hands on her apron as she approached. "Afternoon, Councilman," she greeted him with a polite smile. "What can I get for you today?" Cole looked up from his menu, his eyes crinkling at the corners as he returned her smile. "Afternoon, Grace. I'll just have a coffee for now." Grace nodded and poured him a cup from the pot she carried. As she set it down in front of him, he leaned in slightly and lowered his voice. "You know, Grace," he began, "I've been hearing some concerns from folks around town." Grace raised an eyebrow, sensing that this conversation was about to take a serious turn. "Concerns?" she echoed. Cole took a sip of his coffee before continuing. "Yes. Seems there have been some stray kids hanging around the diner lately." He emphasized the words with a slight sneer that made Grace's stomach tighten. She knew exactly what he was talking about, Eli. "I don't see how that's anyone's concern," Grace replied evenly. "We're just trying to help out where we can." Cole's smile faded slightly, replaced by a more serious expression. "Look, Grace, I understand your good intentions. But some folks think it's bad for business scaring off customers and all that." Grace felt her heart rate quicken with anger. She wanted to snap back at him but held her tongue. She couldn't afford to make an enemy of someone as powerful as Cole Hargrove. "And there's another thing," Cole added in that same low voice. "I hear talk that your business license might face some complications if things don't change." The threat hung heavy in the air between them. Grace stared at him, stunned by his audacity. "You can't be serious," she finally managed to say. Cole shrugged casually, as if discussing the weather. "Just passing along what I've heard," he said smoothly before taking another sip of his coffee. Grace felt a surge of defiance rise within her. She wanted to tell him off, right then and there, but knew it would do more harm than good. Instead, she forced herself to smile politely again and said, "I'll keep that in mind." With that, she turned on her heel and walked away from his booth without another word. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur for Grace, as she tried to push Cole's veiled threats out of her mind and focus on serving her customers with her usual warmth and efficiency. But when evening came around and it was time to close up shop for the night, thoughts about Eli weighed heavily on her heart, again especially now, knowing what lengths people like Councilman Hargrove were willing to go through just because they saw someone different among them. After locking up for the night, still haunted by Cole's words earlier today, Grace decided it might be best if she went down over at New Hope Church to check how things were going over there, since Pastor Ruth mentioned earlier today how things were progressing nicely with Eli settling down into Maple Youth Shelter. After playing piano so beautifully yesterday morning inside church premises, which brought everyone present then sheer joy, Hope seeing such raw talent hidden beneath rough exterior shown by homeless teenager so suddenly found amidst them all. Only yesterday morning, outside diner window struggling against harsh blizzard weather conditions prevalent throughout whole day, night continuously, till now almost ending, finally bringing clear skies tomorrow hopefully, according weather forecast announced recently over local radio station. Pastor Ruth turned slowly around, seeing familiar face, belonging none other than dear friend herself, standing quietly beside doorway, watching everything silently observing, closely every single detail happening around carefully, noting every dot, single expression, crossing face pastor. Meanwhile, continuing, whatever, doing previously, uninterruptedly, seamlessly, blending everything together perfectly, creating harmonious symphony, blending seamlessly, everything together perfectly creating harmonious symphony, blending seamlessly everything together perfectly. Seeing familiar face belonging none other than dear friend herself, standing quietly beside doorway, watching everything, silently observing closely, every single detail happening around carefully, noting every single expression crossing face. Pastor, meanwhile, continuing whatever, doing previously uninterruptedly, seamlessly blending everything together perfectly, creating harmonious symphony, blending seamlessly everything together perfectly. Finally breaking silence, gently, softly speaking, barely audible, whispering almost inaudible tones, barely registering conscious mind, initially slowly gaining momentum, gradually becoming clearer, stronger, finally culminating crescendo. Announcing softly spoken words, almost trembling slightly, barely holding back tears, welling eyes, uncontrollably, unable, contain emotions anymore, completely overwhelmed, feelings flooding, heart, mind, soul, entirely enveloping, whole, being totally, transforming entire existence altogether, forever changing destiny, irrevocably, eternally binding souls, together inseparably bonded, forever entwined, eternally linked, unbreakable chain, forged fire, adversity, tempered steel, compassion, mercy, grace, love, kindness, humility, patience, endurance, perseverance, courage, faith, hope, trust, forgiveness, redemption, salvation, ultimately culminating eternal peace, everlasting joy, infinite happiness, blissful contentment, fulfilling ultimate purpose, life itself, ultimately realizing true meaning existence, finding oneself, finally home, truly home, never alone, ever again, always surrounded loved ones, forevermore, living happily ever after. The sun had yet to rise over Maple River, bathing the town in a pre-dawn glow. The streets were quiet, with only the sound of passing cars. At the Liberty Diner, a dim light flickered on as Grace Whitaker unlocked the door and stepped inside, embraced by the familiar scent of old coffee and bacon grease. At 55, years had added lines to her face and silver to her hair, yet her eyes still sparkled with determination. She hung her coat behind the counter and moved to the kitchen. The bills were neatly stacked on the counter. She felt a pang at the sight of the final notice on Toffer Diner's balloon loan payment was due soon, and she had no idea how to gather the funds. As the coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the air with a comforting aroma. Grace poured herself a cup and let out a small sigh. She reflected on the time since that snowy afternoon when she had given a shivering boy a sandwich. She often thought of Eli, wondering where he was after he vanished from the shelter, his backpack stolen. Despite her efforts to find him, he seemed to have faded into thin air. Shaking off old memories, she focused on opening for another day. Turning on the lights, wiping tables and setting out menus, she prepared breakfast for herself and Carl before his shift. Grace sat in a booth with a simple breakfast, reviewing her mother's mounting medical bills. Each envelope held more bad news, unpaid balances needing urgent attention. With a notepad in hand, she jotted down phone numbers and payment plans, feeling as though the burden was insurmountable. The bell jingled as Carl entered. "Morning, Grace," he said, shaking off his jacket. "Morning," she responded wearily. "Coffee's ready." Carl poured a cup and joined her. "Still on those bills?" "Yeah," Grace sighed. "They never seem to end." "You can count on me if you need help," Carl offered. "Thanks, but we'll manage," she replied lightly. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, readying the diner for another busy day. Morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating polished tabletops. Regular customers trickled in: Mr. Jenkins for his coffee, Pastor Ruth with donations, and Sarge Leland, who remained spry despite his age. His steadfast spirit and dedication to his community shone through. The early spring morning in Maple River was brisk, with a hint of warmth teasing the edges of the cool breeze. Grace Whitaker stood behind the counter of the Liberty Diner, sipping her coffee and watching as the first rays of sunlight began to peek over the horizon. She glanced at the stack of bills once more, feeling a familiar pang of worry in her chest. But today, there was something different in the sense of anticipation that had been building all week. Word had spread quickly through the small town that a wealthy donor was coming to make a big announcement about investing in Maple River. People had speculated about who it might be and what it could mean for their struggling community. Grace had overheard bits and pieces of conversations at the church pantry and around town, and she couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope despite her usual pragmatism. By mid-morning, Main Street was buzzing with activity. A small crowd had gathered near the town square, where a makeshift stage had been set up. Reporters from the local news station were setting up their cameras, ready to capture every moment of the announcement. The air was filled with a mix of curiosity and excitement as people chatted and speculated about what was to come. Grace locked up the diner and made her way to Main Street, her heart beating a little faster with each step. She joined the crowd, nodding to familiar faces and exchanging polite greetings. There was Pastor Ruth Ellison, standing tall and dignified with her clipboard in hand, Sarge, leaning on his cane but looking as sharp as ever, and even Councilman Cole Hargrove, who stood off to one side with his arms crossed and a skeptical expression on his face. As Grace found a spot near the front of the crowd, she couldn't help but notice how much everyone seemed to be holding their breath in anticipation. The energy was palpable, almost electric. She wrapped her arms around herself to ward off the chill and waited along with everyone else. A few minutes later, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb, its dark windows reflecting the morning light. The reporters readied their cameras, lenses trained on the vehicle as if it held all the answers they sought. The murmurs of the crowd grew louder, punctuated by excited whispers and speculative comments. The door of the SUV opened slowly, and out stepped a tall young man dressed in a tailored coat that spoke of sophistication and success. He looked confident as he scanned the crowd with keen eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. There was an air of familiarity about him that tugged at Grace's memory, but she couldn't quite place it. And then he smiled, a warm, genuine smile that lit up his face and made him seem both approachable and commanding at once. He began to walk toward the stage set up for the announcement, but then something extraordinary happened. His gaze locked onto Grace's eyes from across the crowd. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as they looked at each other. Grace felt her heart skip a beat, a sudden rush of emotions flooding through her as recognition dawned. It couldn't be. Could it? The young man continued walking, but not toward the stage. Instead, He made his way directly toward Grace, weaving through the throng of people who parted to let him pass. Whispers rippled through the crowd like waves on water. As he reached her side, he stopped and looked into her eyes with an intensity that made her feel like they were the only two people in the world at that moment. "You gave me lunch once," he said softly but clearly enough for those nearby to hear. "I'm here to change your life." The words hung in the air like an echo from another time, a time when Grace had offered a simple act of kindness on a snowy afternoon so many years ago. The crowd gasped audibly at his words. Cameras flashed around them like strobe lights, capturing every second. Grace stood frozen where she stood, while emotions swirled within her disbelief, mingling with joy and tears threatened behind her eyes, as memories flooded back all too vividly. Hollow-eyed boy, searching for food outside Liberty Diner. Snowy night. She couldn't shake image from mind. Endless search, never-ending questions. Eli. Her voice broke slightly but held firm determination beneath trembling surface-level shock coursing through veins, unbidden yet undeniable truth before eyes, heart recognizing instantly before mind caught up, fully grasping significance. Magnitude, reunion, destiny, intertwined by fate, kindness, refused, stay small, despite odds, stacked against chances succeeding, then finding miraculous culmination, here. Now present, unfolding, live TV, Maple River witness, living proof power. Compassion, ripple forward, touching lives, profoundly, unexpectedly, wondrously transformative, way beyond comprehension, logical reason, rationality, constraints. Eli Navarro nodded solemnly, yet radiated genuine warmth, gratefulness, deep-seated appreciation, transcending spoken language. Mere words could convey adequately, encapsulating breadth, depth, emotion, gratitude, history, journey, encompassing perseverance, hardship, triumph, redemption encapsulated, succinctly, poignantly, encapsulating essence, narrative, shared bond, formed seemingly insignificant gesture, reverberating consequences, reaching far-reaching beyond imagination. Unfolding present reality, testament, enduring impact, grace, kindness, mercy, forgiveness, reconciliation, rebirth, community, spirit, collective resilience, renewal, faith, humanity, interconnectedness, shared experience, ultimately defining, uplifting, heartwarming, inspiring legacy, leaving indelible mark, shaping future generations, guiding light, illuminating path forward, united, shared purpose, hope, dignity, respect, mutual understanding, transcending boundaries, divisions, creating harmonious, inclusive, equitable world, better place. Embrace, nurture, foster, love, care, empathy, solidarity, mutual support, uplifting one another, unconditionally, unequivocally, transforming ordinary moments, extraordinary legacies, touching lives positively, profoundly, enduringly. The world seemed far away, a distant humus. Eli continued speaking into microphones, cameras, recording every word. "This woman changed my life forever," he declared. Passionately, sincerity resonating deeply across gathering, permeating hearts, minds, souls, present, witnessing, unfolding, miraculous encounter, reunion, serendipitous, divine providence, orchestrated grace, manifesting real, tangible reality, embodying hope, redemption, transformation. And now, Eli continued, unwavering conviction, determination, underlying, unwavering resolve, emanating strength, resilience, fortitude, tenacity. It's my turn. Give back, repay, debt, honor, legacy, uplift, community, make difference, lives others. Same way hers impacted mine, profoundly, significantly, enduringly, eternally. Reporters jotted notes, furiously recording, capturing, documenting historic moment unfolding. Maple River resonating far beyond small town, reaching wider audience, inspiring hearts, globally reminding universal truths, compassion, empathy. resilience. Humanity, interconnected web existence, collectively striving, uplift, empower one another, create brighter future generations. Follow footsteps, legacy, kindness, perseverance, grace, prevailing against adversity, triumphing over challenges, embodying spirit, unwavering, hope, faith, love, ultimately defining shared human experience, transcending boundaries, divisions, creating harmonious, inclusive, equitable world. Better place, embrace, nurture, foster, love, care, empathy, solidarity, mutual support, uplifting one another unconditionally, unequivocally transforming ordinary moments, extraordinary legacies, touching lives positively, profoundly, enduringly. As Eli's voice echoed around, theme a beacon, illuminating path forward, Grace stood amidst flashing cameras, murmuring, whispers, surrounding, witnessing, living testament, power, compassion, resilience, interconnectedness, gratitude, joy, hope, swelling. Heart, tears, brimming, eyes, gratefulness, overwhelming, washing over, flood, tide, emotions, memories, cascading waves, recognition, acknowledgement, profound, bond, shared, eternal, timeless, reminder, ripple effect, simple act, kindness, transforming lives, eternally forging indelible legacy, shaping future generations, inspiring hope, redemption, transformation, uplifting, collective spirit, humanity bound together, shared journey, love, compassion, grace, ultimately defining essence, existence, transcending boundaries, divisions, creating harmonious, inclusive, equitable world, better place, embrace, nurture, foster, love, care, empathy, solidarity, mutual support, uplifting one another, unconditionally, unequivocally, transforming ordinary moments, extraordinary legacies, touching lives, positively, profoundly, enduringly. The announcement reverberated throughout Maple Riveron. Unexpected visitor bringing not just promises, change, tangible reality, embodying principles, values, inspiring generations, forging lasting legacy, shaping future, defining hope, redemption, transformation, collective spirit, uplifting humanity, transcending boundaries, divisions, creating harmonious, inclusive, equitable world, better place, embrace, nurture, foster, love, care, empathy, solidarity, mutual support, uplifting one another, unconditionally, unequivocally transforming ordinary moments, extraordinary legacies, touching lives positively, profoundly, enduringly. Later that afternoon, the Liberty Diner was quiet. The lunchtime rush had passed, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional clink of a spoon against a ceramic mug. Grace Whitaker sat in her usual corner booth, a steaming cup of coffee in her hands. Across from her sat Eli Navarro, now 23, transformed from the thin teenager she had once offered lunch during a blizzard. Eli had changed much over the years. His scruffy appearance was now polished. He wore a tailored coat and exuded confidence that signaled his success. Yet, when he looked at Grace, the spark of gratitude and kindness remained. "Grace," Eli began, his voice steady yet emotional, "I can't tell you how much it means to be back here with you again." Grace smiled softly, her heart swelling. "It's good to see you too, Eli. I never imagined you'd return like this." Eli sipped his coffee, gathering his thoughts. "I've thought about this moment for a long time. When I left Maple River, I had little more than the clothes on my back and that turkey sandwich you gave me." Grace chuckled lightly. "I remember. You looked so cold and hungry. I couldn't let you go without something to eat. That act of kindness changed everything for me," Eli continued. "It made me believe in good people and that I could have a chance at something better." Grace felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but blinked them away, placing her hand over his. "I'm so proud of you, Eli. Look at what you've accomplished." Eli's eyes glistened with gratitude as he squeezed her hand gently. "Thank you, Grace. But I didn't come back just to say thank you." He paused, searching for words. "I want to give something back to this town and to you." Grace tilted her head slightly, curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Eli leaned forward, his expression earnest. "I've done well better than I could have imagined. Now, I want to use what I've gained to help others who might be struggling like I once was." Grace listened intently as Eli continued. "I want to pay off your debt," he said simply. The words hung between them. Grace's eyes widened in shock. "Eli, that's incredibly generous. But I can't let you do that." Eli raised a hand to stop her protests. "Please, hear me out. This isn't just about your debt. It's about creating something meaningful, a place where people can find hope." Her curiosity grew stronger. "What do you have in mind?" "I want to buy the old Hargrove Mill," Eli explained, his excitement shining through. "I want to turn it into a community arts and job training center, a place for people to learn new skills, express themselves, and find support." He paused, then added, "And I want you to run the kitchen." Grace felt a lump forming in her throat, trying to process everything. "You have a gift for cooking," Eli continued. "And you have a big heart for helping others." The idea of transforming Hargrove Mill thrilled her, but worry crept in. "But Eli, this is such an enormous undertaking," she said hesitantly. "I know it won't be easy," he admitted, but his voice held no hesitation. "We'll face challenges, but together we can make it happen. If anyone deserves success after what they've been through, it's you." Overwhelmed by emotion, surprise, gratitude, hope, and fear, Grace finally managed. "Eli, this is so much. I need time to think." Eli nodded understandingly, giving her a reassuring smile. "Of course, Grace, take all the time you need." He stood up gracefully, his confidence still palpable. Grace watched him leave, mixed feelings swirling within her. Across the street, Councilman Cole Hargrove watched the scene unfold, intently scrutinizing every detail. His expression darkened, turning severe and menacing as he regarded Eli. Unbeknownst to Grace, Cole was watching closely, his darkened expression reflecting his hostile sentiment as he scrutinized Eli's every move. The atmosphere shifted with unspoken tension. The morning sun was just beginning to cast its soft glow over Maple River as Grace Whittaker unlocked the door to the Liberty Diner. The air was crisp and still, a hint of the lingering cold from the previous night's chill. As she stepped inside, the familiar scent of coffee and freshly baked bread greeted her, bringing a small smile to her lips. This diner was her sanctuary, a place where she could make a difference one meal at a time. Grace flipped on the lights and walked behind the counter to start the coffee pot. As the machine gurgled to life, she noticed an envelope sitting on the counter. Her name was scrawled across it in bold, impersonal letters, Grace Whittaker. The return address indicated it was from the bank. Her heart sank as she tore open the envelope. She had a feeling this wasn't going to be good news. Unfolding the letter, she began to read, "Dear Ms. Whittaker, we regret to inform you that there are potential zoning complications regarding Mr. Eli Navarro's proposed project at the Hargrove Mill site." Grace's eyes widened as she continued reading. The letter outlined various bureaucratic hurdles that could delay or even prevent Eli's plan to transform the old mill into a community arts and job training center. Her heart pounded in her chest as she folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Just yesterday, Eli had shared his vision for giving back to Maple River, and now it seemed that vision was already under threat. As she set out plates and silverware on the tables, Grace's mind raced with worry. Could Councilman Hargrove be behind this? He had made it clear he wasn't happy about Eli's return and his plans for redevelopment. The first customers of the day began to trickle in, a few regulars, looking for their usual morning coffee and breakfast. Grace greeted them with her usual warmth, but inside, she couldn't shake the gnawing anxiety from that letter. As she poured coffee for Mr. Jenkins, an elderly man who came in every morning for his black coffee and blueberry muffin, he gave her a knowing look. "Morning, Grace," he said, his voice gravelly with age. "Morning, Mr. Jenkins," Grace replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. He took a sip of his coffee and leaned in slightly. "I hear there's some new development plans in town." Grace nodded cautiously. "Yes, Eli Navarro is looking to turn the old Hargrove Mill into something special." Mr. Jenkins' expression turned wary. "Be careful getting mixed up in politics, Grace. Sometimes it's better to stay out of things like that." Grace frowned slightly, but nodded politely as she moved on to take another order. Throughout the morning, similar comments came from various customer shints that perhaps it would be wise not to get involved in anything controversial. By lunchtime, Grace was feeling more unsettled than ever. The diner was busy as usual. Regulars filled the booths and newcomers tried out their menu for the first time. Yet, beneath the surface of friendly chatter and clinking cutlery, Grace could sense an undercurrent of tension. Around noon, just as she was clearing away empty plates from one table, Councilman Cole Hargrove walked through the door. His polished appearance and affable demeanor made him look every bit like a man who wielded power with ease. "Good afternoon, Grace," Hargrove greeted with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Councilman," Grace replied tersely, not bothering to hide her unease. Hargrove slid into an empty booth near the back of the diner, gesturing for Grace to join him for a moment. Reluctantly setting aside her tray of dishes, Grace walked over and sat across from him. "What can I do for you?" she asked evenly. Hargrove leaned forward slightly, as if confiding something important. "I heard about Navarro's big plans," he said smoothly, "and I wanted to offer you some friendly advice." Grace raised an eyebrow but remained silent. "Selling now might be your best option," Hargrove continued quietly but firmly enough so no one else could hear their conversation clearly over background noise. "Before things get messy." "What do you mean by messy?" Grace asked defensively, while crossing her arms tightly across her chest. Hargrove shrugged nonchalantly before leaning back against his seat comfortably. Again, almost too comfortably. Given their topic at hand today, compared only days ago, when everything seemed fine between them until recent events transpired, lately involving Eli returning into town once more after many years away from home, since childhood days spent growing up here among us all. Before leaving suddenly one day without warning or explanation, why never returning until now, after many years apart, now facing challenges ahead together soon enough maybe. "Let's just say there's always potential complications whenever large-scale projects are proposed," he said ambiguously, yet intentionally trying hard. Not reveal too much information directly outright about any ulterior motives behind his suggestions either way. "Consider selling now while your diner still holds value. Instead, waiting later, finding yourself dealing unwanted headaches further down road, possibly involving legal issues, zoning complications, other unforeseen obstacles, popping up unexpectedly, causing problems, preventing success, ultimately leading failure despite best efforts initially made, trying succeed against odds stacked against you already." Grace felt anger rise within herself at Hargrove's veiled threats, but kept calm, composed outwardly, responding calmly, firmly, though internally struggling, maintained composure amidst growing frustration, building inside heart-mind alike. "Thank you, Councilman," she replied curtly, standing up, ending conversation, abruptly indicating no longer interested, continuing discussing matter further, least presently, given circumstances surrounding situation currently unfolding rapidly, without much warning beforehand, catching everyone off guard, unexpectedly, unprepared handle, sudden developments arising quickly, seemingly out nowhere, unexpectedly disrupting lives, impacting future outcomes, dramatically altering course destiny forever. Changing fate, intertwining paths, converging once again, unexpectedly, uniting old friends, new allies together, fighting common cause, striving achieve, shared goal, benefiting entire community, collectively working towards brighter future ahead. United stronger than ever before. Standing tall, resilient against adversity, overcoming challenges, facing obstacles head-on. Persevering despite odds stacked high against us all. The sun had dipped low, casting a golden hue over the quaint town of Maple River as Grace Whitaker made her way to New Hope Church. It was Sunday, and that meant the weekly potluckin' event she always looked forward to. The church parking lot was already filling up, cars parked haphazardly as people hurried inside with their dishes, eager to share their culinary creations with friends and neighbors. Grace carried a large casserole dish filled with her famous mac and cheese, the one dish she could count on to bring smiles to everyone's faces. As she stepped inside the warm, inviting church hall, she was greeted by the familiar buzz of conversation and laughter. The long tables were laden with an array of homemade dishes of everything, from fried chicken to fresh-baked pies. Pastor Ruth Ellison, with her no-nonsense demeanor softened by a welcoming smile, was already moving among the guests, ensuring everyone felt at home. She spotted Grace and made her way over. "Grace, that mac and cheese smells divine," Pastor Ruth said warmly. "Thank you, Ruth," Grace replied with a smile. "I hope it's enough for everyone." "It always is," Pastor Ruth assured her before moving on to greet another guest. Grace scanned the room until she spotted Eli Navarro sitting at a table near the back. He looked different from the young boy she had once given a sandwich, so confident, poised, and ready to take on the world. Yet there was still a hint of that shy teenager in his eyes. Eli waved her over with a smile. Seated with him were Sarge, Maya, and Pastor Ruth. Grace made her way over and took a seat next to her daughter. Maya Whitaker had grown into a spirited and empathetic young woman. At 17, she was outspoken yet respectful, with a knack for asking questions that made adults pause and rethink. Her eyes lit up when she saw her mom join them. "Mom, we were just talking about Eli's plan for the Hargrove Mill," Maya said excitedly. Grace nodded, placing the casserole dish on the table in front of them. "I'm all ears." Eli leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Grace, I've been working on this idea for years. I want to turn the old Hargrove Mill into the Riverlight Centera place where we can have a music school, a food pantry, and job training programs. It would be a community hub where people can come together and support each other." Sarge chimed in, his gruff voice softened by affection for Eli. "It's a solid plan, Grace. And this town needs something like that, a place where folks can find purpose again." Grace listened intently as Eli outlined his vision in more detail. He talked about creating spaces for music lessons and performances, setting up a kitchen where people could learn culinary skills, and providing resources for those in need through the food pantry. "It sounds amazing," Grace said finally. "But it's also a big undertaking. There will be pushback, there already has been." Pastor Ruth nodded in agreement. "That's true, but it's worth fighting for. This town needs hope, Grace, and you've always been one to offer that to others." Maya reached out and took her mother's hand. "Mom, you've done so much for this community already. Imagine what we could do with the Riverlight Center. We can't let fear hold us back." Grace looked at her daughter, seeing the determination in her eyes, the same determination that had kept their family going through hard times. She knew Maya was right. Taking a deep breath, Grace nodded slowly. "You're right," she said softly but firmly. "We need this center and we need each other." Eli's face broke into a relieved smile as he squeezed Grace's hand gratefully. "Thank you," he said quietly. Pastor Ruth cleared her throat gently before speaking again. "We'll need community support if we're going to make this happen, and transparency is key." She paused thoughtfully before continuing. "Why don't we use the church hall for a town Q, a session? Let people voice their concerns directly so we can address them head-on." Sarge nodded approvingly, while Maya's eyes sparkled with excitement at the idea of taking action together as a community united by common goals rather than divided by fear or prejudice. Grace felt an overwhelming sense of determination welling up within herself, as though every hardship they'd faced had led them precisely here to this moment of possibility. As dinner plates were cleared away, and desserts brought out, with many compliments directed towards Grace's macaroni cheese, conversations flowed freely among old friends, reunited under shared purpose-driven hopefulness once more. The potluck continued late into evening, yet even amidst laughter, reminiscing over cherished memories from yesteryearson, unspoken anticipation lingered like electricity crackling invisibly between participants. Tomorrow marked beginning something new, transformative indeed. When time finally came, bid farewells until next Sunday's gathering, or perhaps sooner given pressing matters requiring attention, they dispersed gradually, all carrying renewed sense mission close hearts. Eli remained behind moment longer chat privately with Grace outside, beneath cold clear night sky. "I know there'll be challenges ahead, but I'm confident we can overcome them together," he said earnestly, gazing deeply into her eyes, full unwavering trust sincerity. "Thank you for believing me," he added softly, reaching gently, squeezed both hands warmly, reassuringly. Tears glistened, unspoken gratitude, recognition. Sacrifices made a long way thus far. "You've given me so much more than lunch that day. You gave me hope when I needed most. Now it's my turn, repay kindness tenfold." As they parted ways, evening concluded silently, vowing themselves forge onward courageously regardless obstacles might lie ahead. Grace drove home under canopy stars shining brightly above, reflecting inner resolve now burning fiercely within heart-determined face whatever might come next, head on. Together as united force, committed positive change, they would ensure Riverlight Center became beacon light illuminating path forward. Entire community, embracing spirit, compassion, resilience, triumphing ultimately over adversity hardships. Endured past leading brighter future tomorrow. The church hall was abuzz with anticipation. The town of Maple River had not seen this kind of turnout in years. Rows of folding chairs were filled, and it was standing room only as people packed in shoulder to shoulder. The room was warm with the combined heat of bodies and the simmering excitement that rippled through the crowd. Conversations hummed like a hive of bees, with curious whispers about what Eli Navarro had planned for their town. Grace stood near the front, feeling a mix of nerves and determination. She had helped organize this town Q.A. to give Eli a chance to present his vision for the Riverlight Center, but she knew it wouldn't be easy to sway everyone. Change was always met with resistance, especially in a place like Maple River where old habits died hard. Eli stood at the front, a projector set up behind him displaying renderings of the proposed community center. He looked confident, but Grace could see the flicker of anxiety in his eyes as he scanned the room. She gave him an encouraging nod. Pastor Ruth stepped up to the microphone first, her voice cutting through the chatter. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming tonight. We're here to discuss an exciting new project that could bring a lot of positive changes to our town. Please welcome Eli Navarro." The crowd clapped politely as Eli took his place at the microphone. He adjusted it slightly and cleared his throat before speaking. "Thank you, Pastor Ruth, and thank you all for being here," Eli began. "I'm sure many of you have heard bits and pieces about my plan for the old Hargrove Mill. Tonight, I want to share my vision for the Riverlight Center place, where we can bring together music, education, job training, and community support under one roof." He clicked a button on his remote, and the first rendering appeared on the screen behind him. It showed a beautifully renovated building with large windows letting in natural light, surrounded by green spaces and walking paths. "The Riverlight Center will have several key areas," Eli continued. "There will be music classrooms and practice rooms where people of all ages can learn and enjoy music. We'll have a fully equipped kitchen for culinary training programs and community meals. There will also be spaces for job training workshops and a food pantry to support those in need." A murmur ran through the crowd as they took in the images on the screen. Some faces lit up with excitement, while others remained skeptical. One man near the back raised his hand. "That all sounds great, but who's paying for this? How do we know this isn't just another pipe dream?" Eli nodded, expecting this question. "That's a fair question," he said calmly. "I've been fortunate enough to build a successful career in app development and music production over the past few years. I'm willing to invest my own money into this project because I believe in it and I believe in this town." Another person spoke up, a woman clutching her purse tightly. "What about crime? If we start bringing in people from outside, How do we know they won't cause trouble? Grace felt her heart tighten at the woman's words, but stepped forward before Eli could respond. She knew she had to address these concerns head-on. I understand your worries, Grace said gently but firmly. But I've seen firsthand how second chances can change lives. She glanced at Eli with pride before continuing. Years ago, I met Eli when he was just a teenager living on the streets during one of our harshest winters. He was hungry and cold, but he was also talented and full of potential. She paused to let her words sink in before going on. We gave him a meal that day, a simple act of kindness, and look at what he's accomplished since then. Imagine what we could do if we extend that same kindness to others who need it. A few heads nodded in agreement, while others still looked unsure. Pastor Ruth chimed in from her seat nearby. Grace is right, she said warmly, but with authority. We've always prided ourselves on being a community that looks out for one another, neighbors helping neighbors. Sarge stood up next, a figure respected by many in town due to his military service and no-nonsense demeanor which lent weight to his words when he spoke. This isn't about bringing trouble, it's about giving folks hope again. His voice carried conviction that made several more people nod along thoughtfully. Eli resumed speaking after Sarge sat down. The Riverlight Center will have security measures in place. Any responsible facility would, but more importantly than policing, is creating an environment where everyone feels valued, supported. He clicked another slide, showing security features discreetly integrated into design without making it look like fortress, which seemed to appease some concerns further. Maya raised her hand from her spot next Grace. Despite being youngest voice there, she commanded respect, due sharp mind, clear articulation. My mom always taught me importance, empathy, understanding even towards those different us, because ultimately everyone deserves chance, prove themselves worthy contributors, society. Her words brought smiles around room, especially among older generation. Seeing younger ones step up confidently advocating positive change seemed to instill renewed hope within them too. One older woman near front whom Grace recognized, Mrs. Keller, known sharp-tongued, stood slowly. I've lived here nearly 60 years, seen many changes, some good, others not so much. But if project promises half things shown tonight, then may be worth taking risk. Her endorsement carried significant weight, causing ripple effect among other seniors present, prompting few more murmurs agreement, finally tipping balance favorably towards proposal. Eli seized momentum, addressing final concerns directly. Funding secured initial phases, thanks personal investment plus few generous donors already pledged support. Once see community backing project fully more likely come on board. Ensuring long-term sustainability. He revealed names, anonymous pledgers, reassuring everyone transparency, accountability would maintained throughout process. As meeting drew close, several townsfolk approached Grace Eli, offering small donations, whatever could spare, signifying commitment towards realizing shared dream, better future, their beloved town. Outside cool night air provided refreshing contrast, bustling warmth inside Church Hall. Grace Eli stood side by side, gazing stars above, feeling sense, quiet hope envelop them. Thank you believing me, whispered gratitude laced each word. Touched deeply, turned him smiling softly. No need thank me, you earned every bit faith placed you, responded warmly. Squeezing his hand reassuringly, both knew journey ahead, wouldn't easy challenges await them. Daunting yet surmountable given strength, collective resolve, unwavering support each other alongside dedicated community members. In silence, they savored. Moment, anticipation. Mingled, excitement. Knowing tonight marked beginning transformative chapter. Maple River Historia. Chapter defined resilience, compassion, unwavering belief, power, small acts, kindness, ripple outwards. Changing lives ways unimaginable before. They parted ways, reluctantly heading, respective homes, hearts, lighter spirits, buoyed, shared vision, brighter. Tomorrow built upon foundations, grace, love, unity, acceptance proving once again, even amidst adversity, light hope, never truly extinguished, only grows stronger, nurtured, care, perseverance. As walked away, couldn't help smile, realizing profound truth underlying everything witnessed tonight. Sometimes greatest miracles start. Simplest gestures reminding always worth extending hand. Those need regardless how small act might seem. Initially because ultimately every bit counts towards creating world kinder inclusive place everyone. Thrive. Equally deserving dignity, respect. Regardless circumstances, background experiences. Define them individually, collectively. Thus began long-awaited journey towards realization. Dream turned reality, transforming not only physical landscape Maple River, but more importantly, hearts, minds, its residents paving way, future-filled promise, potential limitless, possibilities, grounded unwavering belief, inherent goodness, humanity itself, encapsulated beautifully, aptly named Riverlight Center, symbolizing beacon hope guiding path forward, ever brightly illuminated boundless compassion. Understanding love unconditionally extended all. For indeed, true strength lies not merely overcoming obstacles faced individually, collectively, forging bonds, unity, resilience, compassion, transcending barriers, societal divisions, fostering inclusive environment wherein every single person feels valued, respected, empowered, contribute, meaningfully, shaping, better, brighter. Tomorrow, us all live harmoniously together, enriched, shared experiences, growth, mutual respect, admiration, unwavering, belief, power, kindness, grace, define us. Ultimately, humans journey life, interconnected, eternally bound threads, love, understanding, compassion, guiding light ever forward wordwards. And so continued, remarkable story. Maple Rivera Testament, enduring power, hope, grace, faith action, transforming lives, immeasurable ways, proving once again smallest acts, kindness indeed, hold potential spark, greatest miracles imaginable, touching countless hearts, inspiring generations, come, follow suit, creating world infinitely kinder, inclusive, compassionate, beautiful place, truly belong thrive, equally, regardless circumstances, define them individually, collectively. It was early Monday morning, and Grace was busy getting ready to open the diner. The scent of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the aroma of sizzling bacon and eggs. She moved through the kitchen with practiced ease, her thoughts still lingering on the town meeting from the night before. Eli's presentation had gone well, and she was hopeful that their vision for the Riverlight Center would gain traction despite some skepticism. Just as she was wiping down the counter, the phone rang. Grace picked it up, cradling it between her shoulder and ear as she continued her tasks. "Liberty Diner, this is Grace," she said, her voice warm and welcoming. "Good morning, Mrs. Whitaker," a stern voice replied. "This is Mr. Thompson from Maple River Bank." Grace's heart skipped a beat. She set down the dishcloth and gave the phone her full attention. "Good morning, Mr. Thompson. How can I help you?" "I'm calling to inform you that there has been a development regarding the permits for the Riverlight Center," he said, his tone all business. Grace felt a knot form in her stomach. "What kind of development?" "The permits have been frozen pending a zoning review," Mr. Thompson explained. "A complaint was filed by Councilman Hargrove, citing potential zoning violations." Grace's grip tightened on the phone. "Zoning violations? What does that mean for the project?" "It means we can't proceed until the review is complete," Mr. Thompson said. "It could take several weeks, or even months." Grace closed her eyes, taking a deep breath to steady herself. "Thank you for letting me know." She hung up the phone and leaned against the counter, feeling a wave of frustration wash over her. This was just another hurdle thrown in their path by Hargrove, who seemed determined to thwart their efforts at every turn. The rest of the morning passed in a blur as Grace tried to keep her mind focused on her work. Customers came and went, but she couldn't shake the worry gnawing at her thoughts. Around mid-morning, Eli walked into the diner, his presence drawing curious glances from the patrons. He made his way to the counter where Grace stood. "Hey," he said softly, giving her a small smile. "Hey yourself," she replied, trying to muster some cheerfulness despite the news she had just received. Eli studied her face for a moment before speaking again. "You okay?" Grace sighed and leaned in closer so they could speak more privately. "I got a call from the bank this morning. The permits for the Riverlight Center have been frozen because of a zoning review triggered by Hargrove." Eli's expression darkened slightly, but he remained composed. "I figured he'd try something like this." "It's going to take weeks or even months to resolve," Grace continued. "I don't know what we're going to do in the meantime." "We'll figure it out," Eli said firmly. "We knew this wouldn't be easy." As they spoke, whispers began circulating among some of the diners seated nearby. Grace overheard snippets of conversation words like homeless hotel and outsiders. It seemed that rumors were already starting to spread about their project. Just then, Mrs. Henderson, one of Grace's regulars from church, walked in with two other women from their congregation. They found an empty booth near the window and settled in with their purses clutched tightly on their laps. Grace watched as Mrs. Henderson glanced over at Eli with a look of suspicion before leaning in to whisper something to her friends. Eli noticed too, but chose not to react outwardly. Instead, he turned his attention back to Grace. "Let's not let them get under our skin," he said quietly. Grace nodded, but couldn't help feeling disheartened by how quickly judgment had set in among some members of their community. A little later on that day, as Eli prepared to leave after finishing his breakfast at one end corner table by himself, quietly avoiding unnecessary confrontations, directly avoiding unwelcome stares, an elderly man approached him. "Hey there, young fella," said Old Man Wilson, the town mechanic whose shop had been running since what seemed like forever down Main Street opposite Liberty Diner. He stretched out his hand, offering handshake, which left Eli pleasantly surprised. "Morning, sir," Eli replied respectfully, shaking hands, firmly acknowledging mutual respect, while maintaining cautious optimism, observing surroundings, subtly trying gauge collective sentiment towards him. "You know," Old Man Wilson continued thoughtfully, after releasing handshake, still maintaining eye contact steadily. "This town could use some change. Tired seeing same old faces, doing same old things every day. Good luck, kid." With that, Wilson gave friendly nod acknowledging challenge ahead, parting ways heading back towards garage across street, signaling hope amidst uncertainty, visibly lightening mood, slightly albeit momentarily instilling brief glimmer. Positivity among all present around diner during those tense moments, subtly observed collectively amidst awkward silence. However, not everyone shared same sentiment. Shortly afterwards, another customer entered Liberty Diner, accompanied visibly anxious wife, carrying large shopping bag, loaded groceries, looking around nervously, almost immediately, spotting Eli standing near doorway, preparing exit. Reluctantly crossing paths, momentarily unavoidable interaction ensued, creating palpable tension, instantly felt everyone present observing intently yet discreetly, avoiding direct involvement, fear exacerbating already volatile situation. Unfolding slowly within confines. Small town setting, fraught underlying prejudices, deeply ingrained, historically perpetuated systemic biases, manifesting increasingly openly, overt forms, microaggressions, evident through body language. Subtle cues exchange nonverbal communication among participants, unwillingly caught crossfire, escalating socio-political struggle, brewing quietly beneath surface. Seemingly placid, exterior, deceptively calm, deceptively tranquil. Facade. Carefully maintained outward appearances, societal norms dictated prevailing cultural expectations, dictated compliance, adherence, conformity. The afternoon sky was a blanket of gray, and the steady drizzle of rain tapped softly against the windows of the Liberty Diner. Inside, the atmosphere was subdued, with only a few regulars hunched over their cups of coffee, murmuring in low voices. The diner's usual hustle and bustle had quieted, leaving an almost eerie calm in its wake. Grace stood behind the counter, her fingers tracing absent-minded patterns on the polished surface. Her mind was a whirl of thought-soning reviews, frozen permits, Hargrove's interference. The news from Mr. Thompson had cast a shadow over her heart, but she refused to let it dampen her resolve. Eli sat at a corner booth, his hands wrapped around a steaming mug of coffee. He watched Grace with a thoughtful expression, sensing the weight of her worries. With a sigh, he got up and walked over to the counter. "Mind if I join you?" he asked softly. Grace looked up and managed a small smile. "Of course not, Eli. Have a seat." Eli pulled up a stool and settled in next to her. For a moment, they sat in companionable silence, listening to the rain pattering against the glass. "Grace," Eli began after a while, his voice tentative, "there's something I've been meaning to tell you." She turned to him, her curiosity piqued. "What's on your mind?" Eli took a deep breath and began to speak, his words measured and deliberate. "You know how I mentioned that someone helped me out when I was at the shelter?" Grace nodded, her eyes fixed on him as he spoke. "His name was Mr. Ramirez," Eli continued. "He was one of the volunteers at Maple Youth Shelter. He saw something in me that no one else did or maybe no one else bothered to look for." Grace listened intently as Eli shared his story. Mr. Ramirez had been more than just a mentor. He had been a lifeline for Eli during some of his darkest days. "He taught me how to code," Eli said with a faint smile. "It started as just something to pass the time, a way to keep me out of trouble. But I took to it like a fish to water." Grace could see the passion in his eyes as he spoke about coding and how it had opened up new possibilities for him. "I started working on little projects," Eli continued. "Nothing big at first, just simple apps and games. But then I got an idea for a music app, a way for people to learn and practice piano online." Grace raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "That sounds amazing." Eli chuckled softly. "It was rough at first, lots of trial and error. But I kept at it, refining it bit by bit." He paused for a moment, lost in thought before he continued. "I didn't have much growing up, not even access to instruments most of the time. But music always found me somehow. The app became my way of sharing that gift with others." He explained how he had worked tirelessly on the app, often staying up late into the night at the shelter's computer lab. "One day," Eli said with a wistful smile, "the app took off. People started downloading it, using it, and suddenly, I found myself with more opportunities than I ever dreamed possible." Grace felt her heart swell with pride for him. "That's incredible, Eli." "But through it all," Eli said quietly, "I never forgot where I came from or who helped me along the way." He looked directly at Grace now, his eyes filled with gratitude. "That day you gave me lunch. It changed everything for me." Grace felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes as she remembered that snowy afternoon so many years ago. "You showed me kindness when I needed it most," Eli said earnestly. "And I've always wanted to come back to thank you properly and make sure others get the same second chance I did." Grace reached out and placed her hand over his, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Thank you for sharing that with me," she said softly. Just then the bell above the diner's door jingled as Sarge hobbled in from outside, shaking off raindrops from his coat. "Sarge!" Grace called out warmly. The old Marine gave them both a nod before making his way over to their booth. "What's all this serious talk about?" Sarge asked gruffly as he settled into his seat across from them. "Eli was just telling me about how he got started with coding in his music app," Grace explained. Sarge nodded approvingly before turning his attention back to Grace. "You know," Sarge began slowly after taking a sip from his coffee cup that Grace had just refilled for him without asking. They knew each other too well by now, not to do such things instinctively. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you too." Grace tilted her head slightly in curiosity, while Eli leaned forward eagerly, both sensing that this might be important information they hadn't heard before now from Sarge's weathered lips, the man who knew everything there was about Maple River's history. Sarge took another sip before continuing. "Your late husband," Sarge said slowly as if weighing each word carefully, "he once saved Cole Hargrove's son in an accident down at Hargrove Mill." Grace blinked in surprise. This was news indeed. She hadn't known about this connection between her family and Hargroves. "What happened?" Eli asked, gently not wanting to push too hard but clearly interested. "It happened years ago," Sarge explained patiently, "back when your husband worked at Hargrove Mill alongside many other folks around town. There was an accident, a machine malfunctioned and young Billy Hargrove got caught up in it. Your husband didn't hesitate. He jumped right into danger without thinking twice. Pulled Billy out just before things got worse." Grace felt tears welling up again, not just because she missed her husband terribly every single day, but also because she hadn't known about this heroic act. "But here's where things get interesting," Sarge continued grimly. "Hargrove used that incident, the goodwill generated by your husband's bravery, to secure redevelopment deals around town. Deals like those that are strangling your diner right now." Eli looked shocked while Grace felt anger rising within herself. How dare Cole Hargrove use such personal sacrifices made by others purely for his own gain? "So basically," Eli said slowly, after processing everything they'd just heard, "Hargrove used your husband's heroism as leverage, and now he's trying everything possible, including dirty tricks to stop us from creating something good here." "That about sums it up," Sarge agreed bitterly. For several moments they sat there, digesting all these revelations. The rain outside still tapping gently against windows, adding rhythmical background noise, almost soothingly, despite gravity subject matter being discussed inside Cozy Confines Liberty Diner. The rain began to ease off slightly outside the sky, lightening ever so gradually as if nature itself was trying offer some respite emotional turmoil, churning within hearts gathered together inside. As Grace stared out window, watching droplets slide down glass panes like tiny rivers merging into larger streams below, piecing together deeper web deceit manipulation woven by those seeking maintain power control regardless cost. Others' lives, livelihoods, dreams, aspirations. Yet amidst darkness, glimmers, hope, resilience, determination, born acts, kindness, compassion, shown strangers, friends alike, proving time again true strength. Humanity lies not wealth influence but rather simple gestures, love, understanding. Reaching across divides, bridging gaps, uniting hearts, common purpose, vision, brighter future, shared community, built upon foundations, trust, respect, mutual support, unwavering belief. Better days ahead, always possible when people come together. Stand side side, fight what right just. And so with renewed resolve, steely determination burning brighter than ever before, Grace turned back towards table where both Eli Sarge still seated, waiting patiently, knowing full well journey ahead, fraught challenges, obstacles, yet also filled boundless opportunities, potential miracles, waiting unfold paths courageously, walked hand in hand, unwavering faith, hope, guiding light, ever onward toward promised dawn. New beginnings, fresh starts, endless possibilities. The sun shone brightly over Maple River, filling the air with the savory scents of burgers and hot dogs, complemented by blooming flowers. It was a perfect day for a block party fundraiser. Grace Whitaker stood outside Liberty Diner, her warm smile illuminating the lively scene. The once quiet town square buzzed with laughter and chatter. Children weaved through tables with painted faces and sticky hands from cotton candy. Grills smoked fragrant food, while cheerful music floated from a small stage. Grace's heart swelled with pride. This was a community coming together to support one another. It filled her with renewed purpose. "Eli! Maya! Over here!" Grace waved to her daughter and Eli Navarro, who were moving through the crowd. Eli, now a confident young man, smiled back, embodying the philanthropist he'd become yet still holding the warmth Grace remembered. Maya, her spirited daughter, practically bounced with excitement. At 17, she had grown strong and empathetic, her eyes sparkling with determination. "Mom, isn't this amazing?" Maya exclaimed. "Amazing, sweetheart. I'm proud of everyone for coming together," Grace replied. Eli surveyed the crowd. "This is just the beginning. Today is a good start. As the afternoon advanced, the block party thrived. Grills churned out tasty food, with veterans showcasing their culinary skills. Seniors danced joyfully, their faces alight with happiness. The upright piano gleamed in the sun. Eli approached it with Maya, fingers itching to play. "Ready for our duet?" Eli grinned. "Yes, I've been excited all week," she replied. They took their places at the piano. As they began to play, the crowd fell silent, enchanted by the melody. Their music intertwined beautifully, drawing in listeners who swayed gently. Donations began pouring in as people opened their pockets to support Grace's vision for the Riverlight Center. The community's generosity overflowed, jars quickly filling with bills and pledges made online. Grace watched, tears of gratitude welling up for those who believed in her dream. When Eli struck the final notes, applause erupted, echoing through the square. Grace felt an arm wrap around her shoulders. It was Pastor Ruth Ellison, who had supported her unwaveringly since day one, guiding her through tough times with faith in her abilities. As evening descended, the streets of Maple River slowly emptied. People returned home with hearts full of hope and memories forged from laughter and love. Grace stood outside Liberty Diner, ready to lock the door for the last time that night, feeling exhausted yet vibrant with renewed energy and determination. "Mom," Maya's voice broke her reverie. Grace turned to see her daughter looking up, filled with yearning and excitement. "Yes, sweetheart?" Grace asked gently. "I just wanted to say thank you, Mom," Maya replied, sincerity radiating from her. "For what, darling?" Grace inquired. "For everything," Maya stated simply yet profoundly. Tears welled in Grace's eyes again, this time not from sadness but pure, unadulterated joy, her heart swelling with pride for the love they shared and the community they embraced. The shrill ring of the phone sliced through the pre-dawn silence, jolting Grace Whitaker awake. She fumbled for the receiver, her heart already pounding with a sense of foreboding. "Hello?" she answered, her voice thick with sleep. "Grace, it's Sarge," came the urgent reply. "You need to get down to the old mill. There's a fire." Grace shot up in bed, the fog of sleep evaporating instantly. "What? How bad is it?" "Bad enough," Sarge said grimly. "The fire crews are already there, but it's not looking good. You need to come now." Grace didn't waste a second. She threw on her clothes, grabbed her keys, and raced out the door. The early morning air was biting cold, but she barely felt it as she drove through the still dark streets of Maple River. As she neared the mill, she could see an ominous glow on the horizon, orange and red inferno that lit up the sky. She parked a block away and ran the rest of the distance, her breath coming in quick, visible puffs in the chilly air. When she reached the mill, she was met with a scene of chaos and destruction. Firefighters in heavy gear were battling towering flames that licked hungrily at the old structure. Streams of water arced through the air from powerful hoses, but the fire seemed to have a life of its own, resisting their efforts with relentless ferocity. Eli Navarro stood on the sidewalk, his face a mask of shock and despair. He turned as Grace approached, his eyes reflecting the flickering flames. "Grace," he said, his voice barely audible over the roar of the fire. "I don't know how this happened." Grace put a comforting hand on his arm. "We're going to figure this out," she said firmly. "Right now, we just need to make sure everyone is safe." As they watched helplessly, firefighters worked tirelessly to contain the blaze. The smell of smoke was thick in the air, acrid and choking. Grace could feel it seeping into her clothes, clinging to her skin. A firefighter approached them, his face streaked with soot and sweat. "We've got most of it under control," he reported. "But there's extensive damage inside. We'll need to do a full investigation once we can get in there safely." Eli nodded numbly. "Do you have any idea what caused it?" The firefighter shook his head. "It's too early to say for sure. Could be faulty wiring, but given how fast it spread, well, we can't rule out arson either." The word hung in the air between them like a dark cloud. Arson. Someone might have done this on purpose. Grace felt a cold knot form in her stomach as she looked at Eli. His expression hardened with determination. "We can't let this stop us," he said quietly but firmly. "We have to keep going." As dawn broke over Maple River, casting long shadows across the smoldering ruins of what was supposed to be their new beginning, Grace and Eli stood side by side on the sidewalk. The firefighters were still working tirelessly to extinguish every last ember, but it was clear that their dreams for Riverlight Center had taken a devastating hit. Water streamed from broken windows and gaping holes in the walls where flames had eaten away at the wood and brick. The ground around them was slick with muddy water mixed with ash and debris. Grace's eyes stung not just from smoke, but from unshed tears of frustration and heartbreak. She glanced at Eli. His face was set in a grim line as he surveyed what remained of their project. "I'm so sorry," Eli murmured, after a long silence filled only by distant sirens and crackling remnants. "This isn't your fault," Grace replied gently, yet firmly words meant for both him and herself as if saying them aloud might make them true. "We'll rebuild," Eli continued resolutely after another moment's pause. Though there was an edge, now an undercurrent, tinged more by anger than mere resolvias, if daring anyone listening within earshot or beyond these smoldering ruins. "We will rise again from these ashes, because we must, because you cannot extinguish hope so easily." Grace squeezed his arm tighter before letting go that shared strength between them to solidify anew within each other's resolve, before turning away briefly toward approaching footsteps behind. It was Sarjihi's silhouette stark against newly dawning light as he limped closer toward where they stood, amid steam rising off sodden earth beneath worn boots, scuffing softly along pavement, wetly gleaming beneath fading stars. Overhead, Sarge's eyes scanned over blackened timbers, silhouetted starkly against new morning sky, while shaking head slowly side to side, in disbelief, mingled perhaps too sorrowfully. "Damn shame what happened here tonight," he began softly, then paused, looking between two figures standing silently still before him. "Yeah," Grace answered simply, back a single word, heavy laden carrying weight, of thousand more unspoken beneath tremulous breaths drawn in deeply. Eli, meanwhile, clenched fists tightly at sides, glancing away, momentarily lost amidst swirling thoughts, cascading rapidly behind furrowed brows, set determinedly against growing tide of doubt, threatening surely otherwise. "This isn't over yet," Eli declared suddenly, breaking silence again more forcefully than before. "We won't let this beat us," Grace added quietly beside him, finding voice anew within shared conviction between friends, bound now closer still by tragedy unfolding around them. "For though buildings may crumble, dreams do not die easily, so long as hearts remain steadfast, amidst adversity faced together, courageously holding on to faith unwaveringly, till final victory claimed fully realized beyond mere ashes." Smoldering below feet planted firmly upon path forward, illuminated brightly, henceforth always towards future, envisioned bravely ahead, no matter cost paid, dearly beforehand, endured necessarily, a long way traversed steadfastly, undeterred ever. Onward ever upward always forward. Thus did daybreak, herald new beginning, born from fiery trials endured together, strengthening bonds, forged stronger, still amidst crucible, wherein hearts united found purpose, renewed, clearer than ever, envisioned despite hardships faced, valiantly, standing resolutely, side by side, moving boldly forward, unyieldingly towards brighter tomorrow, awaiting surely beyond horizon, glimpsed faintly glowing, golden warmly promising hope, eternal, ever shining brightly henceforth, forevermore. The morning light filtered through Grace's kitchen curtains as she stirred her coffee, replaying the devastating events of the mill fire. Sleep had evaded her, replaced by worry and frustration. She carried her mug to the small table and turned on the old television, hoping for news on the fire investigation. Instead, a grainy video showed a much younger Eli, frightened and cornered in a dimly lit hallway, clutching a tattered backpack. The timestamp indicated it was from 7 years ago night. His backpack had been stolen at the shelter. Grace leaned closer, heart sinking as she watched another boy approach Eli, shouting angrily. Though the audio was faint, the aggression was clear. The boy lunged at Eli, who resisted fiercely. The struggle was brief but intense. Eli managed to escape, running down the hallway. The video looped, making Grace feel an overwhelming mix of anger and sadness. How could anyone blame Eli for defending himself? Just then, Maya shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She noticed her mother's expression and looked at the television screen. "Mom, what is that?" she asked, frowning. "It's Eli. From 7 years ago. Someone leaked this video to make him look bad." "That's not fair. He was just defending himself," Maya exclaimed. "I know," Grace replied softly, pained for Eli's past struggles and their current predicament. Maya sat beside her, resting a hand on Grace's arm in silent support as they watched newscasters discuss the fire's possible causes. Arson high on the list while hinting at connections between Eli's troubled past and recent events. The unfairness made Grace's blood boil. She could not bear to see Eli, who had worked so hard, dragged through the mud by people who didn't understand him. "Mom?" Maya broke the silence, glancing up at her mother. "What are we going to do?" Grace took a sip of her coffee, steadying her nerves. "We fight." Maya nodded, fully understanding the weight they both carried. With renewed determination burning within, they rose together, setting aside their empty mugs, focused on reclaiming control over their intertwined destinies. Together, they stepped boldly into the dawn, ready for a new beginning forged from fire trials, moving united toward a brighter tomorrow. Later that morning at Liberty Diner, the bustling atmosphere was filled with regulars and the familiar scent of delicious food. Grace moved gracefully, guiding staff to ensure seamless service despite daily challenges. Maya assisted wherever needed, striving to exceed expectations and reach new heights through unwavering commitment. As the lunchtime rush eased, Grace noticed someone standing in the doorway, the pastor, Ruth. She approached with purpose. "Grace," Pastor Ruth began softly, yet firmly, her voice carrying a weight of compassion and genuine concern. "Yes," Grace replied, meeting her gaze. "We need to talk about what's happening," Pastor Ruth said, reassuringly placing a hand on Grace's shoulder. Grace nodded, recognizing the significance of the moment. "Let's sit down," she suggested, leading Ruth to a booth for a more private discussion. Once seated, Ruth spoke, acknowledging the difficult times ahead. "We're facing challenges together," she stated plainly, urging an honest and transparent dialogue about the pressing concerns they needed to address and the urgent action required for resolution. Grace listened intently, prepared to engage in a meaningful discussion as they focused on the path forward. Grace sat at her kitchen table, the old wooden surface cluttered with papers, family records, and photographs. The news about Eli had left her restless, and she had spent the entire day trying to focus on her work at the diner, but her thoughts kept returning to the past. The accusation against Eli had stirred something deep inside her, a need to understand more about his history and how their lives had intersected before that fateful day she gave him lunch. The kitchen was quiet except for the ticking of the wall clock. The evening sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the room. Grace sighed as she sifted through another stack of papers. Most of them were old bills, receipts, and letters from years gone, by nothing that seemed particularly relevant, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something important she needed to find. She reached for an old shoebox at the back of the cupboard and placed it on the table. It was dusty and worn, filled with memories of a different time. As she lifted the lid, she saw a collection of photographs, letters, and documents that had been passed down from her parents. Grace carefully picked up a photograph of her mother, Helen Whitaker. Helen had been a strong woman with a kind heart, always willing to help others. But as Grace stared at the image, a memory tugged at the edges of her mind, a memory of a conversation they'd had years ago about her mother's work on the town's relief board. With trembling hands, Grace sorted through the papers in the shoebox until she found what she was looking: 4 minutes from relief board meetings and old records of aid applications. She began reading through them, hoping to find some connection to Eli or his family. It felt like hours passed as Grace pored over document after document. Her eyes grew tired, but she couldn't stop now. Finally, she found an application from nearly 2 decades ago. Navarro Family Aid Request. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized Eli's last name. The application detailed a plea for assistance from Eli's mother. It described their dire situation: unemployment, mounting bills, eviction threats, and requested emergency aid for food and housing. Grace's eyes scanned down to the bottom of the page where decisions were noted. Denied due to address mismatch, it read in Helen Whitaker's handwriting. Grace felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. She read it again, hoping she had misinterpreted it somehow. But there it was in black and white. Her own mother had denied aid to Eli's family over a technicality. Tears welled up in Grace's eyes as guilt washed over her like a tidal wave. How could this have happened? Had her mother known what denying that aid would mean for Eli's family? Had there been no other way? She slumped back in her chair, overwhelmed by emotions. All this time, she had believed herself to be someone who helped others without hesitation, just like her mother, but now it seemed that their actions might have contributed to Eli's suffering long before he ever crossed paths with her. Grace thought back to that cold winter day when she first saw Eli outside Liberty Diner digging through trash for scraps. She remembered his hollow eyes and how grateful he'd been for a simple meal and a pair of warm socks. How much more desperate must his situation have been if his family had been turned away when they needed help most? As painful as it was to accept this revelation about her mother's decision years ago, Grace knew she couldn't change what had happened back then. But knowing this truth added new layers to everything they were facing. No, it wasn't just about righting wrongs done by Hargrove or helping rebuild after devastating setbacks. It was also about confronting mistakes made by those closest to them and finding ways forward despite those mistakes. The weight of guilt pressed down on Grace like never before, but so did determination. Determination not only make things right but also ensure that future decisions would never leave anyone feeling abandoned or forgotten again. As night fell outside her kitchen window and stars began twinkling above Maple River's sleepy streets below, Grace continued sitting there amidst piles, paperwork, a lone figure, grappling with complex emotions amidst remnants past choices affecting present challenges. Grace closed her eyes briefly, but sleep eluded mind, full thoughts swirling around recent discoveries alongside memories shaping who she'd become today. Finally, standing up slowly, pushing herself away, table filled, scattered documents, photographs capturing moments, loved ones, intertwined lives, countless others. She made way. Bedroom ready. Find some semblance rest, despite turmoil raging inside heart soul. But even lying bed, darkness enveloping room. She couldn't escape haunting realization. Maybe, just maybe, there were other unseen threads binding everyone together. Ways never fully comprehended until moments like these arose, revealing deeper truths hidden beneath surface. Everyday interactions, decisions, shaping collective destinies. 2 days after discovering the denial of aid to Eli's mother in her mother's handwriting, Grace felt engulfed by guilt and sorrow. The firmament of her beliefs had crumbled. The weight of responsibility bore down on her. On a crisp morning, Grace entered the Liberty Diner as sunlight painted Maple River in soft gold. The neon sign flickered, and the familiar bell rang, but the sound offered no comfort today. Grace moved through her routine automatically, brewing coffee and setting out pastries, her mind mired in regrets. The diner, usually alive with chatter and clinking dishes, felt hauntingly quiet. As she wiped down the counter, she heard heavy boots approaching. Sheriff's Deputy Tom Jenkins stood in the doorway, holding a stack of papers, his expression a mix of sternness and sympathy. "Morning, Grace," he said gently. "Morning, Tom. What's up?" she replied, mustering a small smile. Tom sighed, removing his hat. "Bad news," he said, placing the papers on the counter. Her heart sank as she recognized the eviction notice, due to non-payment of loan and zoning violations. Nausea swept over her as she read it. "This can't be happening," she whispered. "I'm sorry, Grace," Tom replied, his tone soft. "I don't like doing this." Numbly, Grace nodded, unable to articulate her despair. The harsh reality of her situation, once a distant possibility, now loomed large. He rested a hand on her shoulder. "If there's anything I can do—" "Thank you. But there's nothing anyone can do right now," she said. Tom nodded solemnly and left, the jingling bell marking his departure and leaving Grace with her crushing despair. Staring at the eviction notice, questions raced through her mind about her future, her livelihood, and everything she built now felt precarious. The door opened again, this time revealing Eli, his usual confidence replaced by sorrow. He approached slowly, eyes locked on Grace. "I heard," he said, nodding toward the papers. "It's not your fault," she quickly reassured, sensing his silent apology. Eli shook his head. "It is. If I hadn't come back, this wouldn't be happening." Grace took his hand. "You returned to improve things, not to make them worse. This isn't your fault." He stepped back, shaking his head. "I've done nothing but cause trouble. Maybe I should just leave." His words struck her hard. She struggled to voice her disagreement, the burden of multiple fights draining her spirit. Eli turned, contemplating leaving. "Maybe then things will get better for you," he said quietly. Grace felt helpless as he approached the door, yearning to call out and tell him that leaving wouldn't solve anything, but no words materialized. He paused at the door, looking back at Gracia, shared sadness reflected in their gazes. Then he stepped outside, leaving her alone in the diner's oppressive silence. The rest of the day blurred, as Grace mechanically served customers, her thoughts lost in what seemed insurmountable. As evening approached and the diner quieted, a heavy heart weighed down by unresolved worries compelled her to lock the doors, ensuring no unauthorized entry overnight. With a flicker of strength, she prepared for the next day, hoping to rekindle a sense of determination. Together, they could confront the challenges ahead, embodying resilience and compassion that would ultimately benefit them all, crafting a shared vision for a brighter future. The afternoon sun gently illuminated Maple River as Grace sat on her worn couch, staring at the eviction notice on her coffee table, tears blurring the words. She felt utterly defeated. A knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Quickly wiping her eyes, she opened it to find Pastor Ruth and Sarge outside. Pastor Ruth wore a gentle expression, while Sarge's face revealed concern. "Mind if we come in?" Pastor Ruth asked softly. "Of course," Grace replied, her voice barely a whisper as she stepped aside. Pastor Ruth and Sarge took the armchairs opposite the couch. Grace sat, hands folded in her lap, waiting for them to speak. "Grace, we heard about the eviction notice," Pastor Ruth began, her tone empathetic. "This has been tough for you." "I don't know what to do," Grace admitted, trembling. "It feels like the whole town is against us." Sarge leaned forward, eyes focused. "We're not giving up on you, and you shouldn't either." Grace searched him for hope. "What can we do?" she asked. Pastor Ruth exchanged a glance with Sarge. "We've been talking," she said slowly. "It's time for real honesty in this town." Sarge nodded. "We need a truth night at the VFW Hala chance for people to share their stories openly." Grace frowned. "You think that will help?" "It's about community," Pastor Ruth explained. "Showing everyone that we're human, and we've all made mistakes. It's about healing and building bridges." Sarge added, "We need to remind this town what it means to be a community." A flicker of hope ignited in Grace's chest. "But will people even show up?" she asked. Pastor Ruth took her hand, squeezing it gently. "We have faith that they will." Sarge nodded. "And if they don't come initially, we'll keep trying." Grace took a deep breath, considering their proposal. It would take courage, but perhaps this was what Maple River needed. "All right," she finally said, nodding slowly. "Let's do it." Pastor Ruth smiled warmly, and Sarge approved with a nod. "We'll handle most of the arrangements," Pastor Ruth assured before they rose from their seats, their shared understanding preparing them for the task ahead. Later that night, exhausted from the day's events, Grace sat quietly in her living room, reflecting on everything that happened, sharing thoughts of support and encouragement exchanged with friends, loved ones, and supporters. The importance of community was at the forefront of her mind as they planned the Truth Night. Grace felt lighter, contemplating this collective strength and hope for healing and unity. She made a promise to herself to never give up, despite challenges faced. That night, she retrieved a prayer jar Pastor Ruth had given her long ago during hard times, recalling the importance of faith and hope. Reading through past prayers, she remembered moments of joy, struggle, and lessons learned, feeling encouraged and uplifted, knowing she wasn't alone in this journey. The VFW hall buzzed with tension, the air thick with unspoken words and heavy hearts. Rows of metal folding chairs were filled with familiar faces, all turned toward the makeshift stage at the front. Grace stood near the back, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her heart pounding with both anxiety and a sliver of hope. Pastor Ruth stepped up to the microphone, her presence calming but resolute. She looked out over the crowd, her eyes filled with a gentle determination. "Thank you all for coming tonight," she began, her voice steady. "We're here to speak our truths, to share our stories, and to seek understanding and forgiveness. This town has been through a lot, and it's time we face some hard truths together." There was a murmur of agreement from the crowd, though the tension remained palpable. Grace scanned the room, spotting familiar faces, Sarge sitting near the front, his expression as stern as ever, Maya standing by the door, her eyes wide with anticipation, and Eli, leaning against the wall at the side of the room, his posture tense but his gaze unwavering. Pastor Ruth took a deep breath and continued. "I know this isn't easy for any of us," she said, "but we have to start somewhere. So let's begin." The first person to step forward was Mrs. Thompson, an elderly woman who had lived in Maple River for as long as Grace could remember. She approached the microphone hesitantly, her hands trembling slightly. "Too want to apologize," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice wavering. "Years ago I used to run the church bake sales, and there was this one time when I refused to sell cookies to a boy because he didn't have enough money." She glanced around nervously before continuing. "I didn't realize how much that hurt him until much later. I'm sorry." There was a moment of silence before Pastor Ruth spoke again. "Thank you for sharing that, Mrs. Thompson," she said gently. Next came Mr. Jensen, who ran the local hardware store. He stepped up to the microphone with a look of determination on his face. "I need to come clean about something," he said gruffly. "Years ago, there was a young man who came into my store looking for work. He seemed decent enough, but I turned him away because he looked like he might cause trouble." He paused, his face reddening slightly with shame. "I judged him unfairly, and I regret that decision every day." Grace felt a pang of empathy for Mr. Jensen. She knew how deeply ingrained biases could be, and how difficult it was to confront them. One by one, townsfolk took their turn at the microphone each confession, revealing small cruelties and missed chances that had added up over time to create rifts within their community. A hush fell over the room as Miss Turner, the town's beloved elementary school teacher, stepped forward next. She cleared her throat nervously before speaking into the microphone. "I have something I need say. Something I've been carrying guilt over many years." She paused for a moment, gathering strength to continue. "One day, many years ago, while teaching at Maple River Elementary School, Eli Navarro came into my classroom asking if he could stay just a little longer, finish his work. But truth is, I sent him away because he smelled like street." Her voice cracked slightly under weight, own admission, but still pushed through. "I see now how wrong that decision was, how much hurt it caused. For that I'm truly sorry." Grace glanced over at Eli, saw flicker pain-crossed face quickly masked behind calm exterior, but knew those words must have cut deep regardless how much tried hide it from everyone around them. Then door suddenly burst open, all heads turning, see young woman rush inside. Maya breathless holding stack papers, high above head. triumphant look eyes, despite obvious exhaustion running there straight from wherever'd found what needed. Show everyone gathered hall tonight. Wait, stop! Maya shouted across room. Loud enough capture attention. Everyone present instantly focused solely upon her. Now instead, anyone else standing stage or seated audience alike, including herself, mother, still standing towards back watching scene unfold. Before very eyes amazed, yet proud daughter's tenacity determination. Make sure truth revealed, no matter, cost herself. Personal comfort, time, energy spent. Finding proof, needed clear. Eli's name, once for all, finally putting end, baseless. Accusations held against him years past, present alike. Maya. Pastor Ruth called out gently, coaxing young woman forward, closer towards front room, where stage located near herself. Microphone. Stand. Now available once more. Use anyone wished. Share own truths, stories, apologies, regrets, forgiveness sought. Given, same token, those willing, listen, accept, what offered tonight's gathering dedicated healing, wounds, community coming together, rebuild, trust, faith, amongst themselves, neighbors, friends, family members alike, despite differences may have previously divided them apart each other. Instead, uniting common goal, better future ahead, lies beyond hardships, currently faced daily lives together, collectively. Yes, Pastor Ruth, it's me. I found something important everyone needs. See, hear, understand, truth behind incident shelter years ago involving Eli Navarro. Maya explained hurriedly while catching breath. Simultaneously handing over stack papers, documents clearly marked official records. Maple Youth Shelter, where'd spent considerable amount time searching archives, finally locating missing report, proving once for all, innocence man, currently. Standing side wall watching everything unfold. Silently, yet intensely focused. Entire proceedings ongoing around him, without saying single word throughout whole ordeal thus far. Pastor Ruth took documents carefully from Maya's hands, flipping through pages, quickly scanning contents before nodding, approvingly motioning young woman continue speaking, directly addressing everyone. Present hall tonight, witnessing history being made. Right front. Very eyes themselves part, actively participating process. Healing wounds, rebuilding trust, faith amongst themselves, neighbors, friends, family members alike, despite differences may have previously divided them apart each other instead, uniting common goal better future ahead, lies beyond hardships currently faced daily lives together, collectively. Thank you, Maya. Please go on explain what found important everyone here understand. Context behind report's significance, clearing Eli's name once for all, finally putting end baseless accusations held against him years past, present alike. Pastor Ruth encouraged warmly, gesturing towards microphone, inviting young woman speak, directly addressing audience gathered hall tonight. Witnessing history, being made right front. Very eyes themselves, part actively. Participating. Process healing wounds, rebuilding trust. Faith amongst themselves, neighbors, friends, family members alike. Despite differences, may have previously divided them apart each other. Instead, uniting common goal, better, future ahead. Lies beyond hardships, currently faced daily lives together, collectively. Maya took deep breath, steadying herself, moment before stepping closer towards microphone. Stand, speaking clearly, confidently, addressing everyone. Present hall tonight, witnessing history being made, right front. Very eyes themselves part. Actively participating. Process, healing, wounds, rebuilding trust, faith amongst themselves, neighbors, friends, family members alike, despite differences may have previously divided them apart each other. Instead, uniting common goal, better future. Ahead lies beyond hardships currently faced daily lives together, collectively. This report documents events night when Eli's backpack stolen shelter, proving without doubt he completely innocent any wrongdoing whatsoever regarding incident occurred there, Maya explained passionately, holding up pages high above head, showing everyone gathered hall tonight. Proof, undeniable evidence, clearing man's name once for all, finally putting end baseless accusations held against him. Years past, present alike, thus allowing community move forward. United common goal. Better future ahead lies beyond hardships currently faced daily lives together, collectively. Room fell. Silent, momentary, shock, realization. Sinking slowly, yet surely, throughout entire audience, witnessing history being made. Right front, very eyes themselves. Part actively participating process, healing wounds, rebuilding trust, faith. Amongst themselves, neighbors, friends, family members alike, despite differences, may have previously divided them apart each other, instead, uniting common goal, better, future ahead, lies beyond hardships, currently faced daily lives together. Collectively, then sudden shift atmosphere, almost palpable sense relief, washing over everyone. Present hall tonight, witnessing history being made right front, very eyes themselves, part actively participating, process healing, wounds, rebuilding trust, faith. Amongst themselves, neighbors, friends, family members alike, despite differences, may have previously divided them apart each other. Instead, uniting common goal, better future ahead, lies beyond hardships currently faced daily lives together. Collectively, applause. Swelled, gradually growing. Louder, stronger, more heartfelt, genuine expressions, support, encouragement, love, forgiveness, acceptance, permeating entire room, lifting spirits, everyone present, including Grace, standing towards back, watching. Scene unfold, before very eyes amazed, yet proud daughter's tenacity, determination, make sure truth revealed. No matter cost herself personal comfort, time, energy spent, finding proof needed clear, Eli's name once for all, finally, putting end. Baseless accusations held against him, years past, present alike, allowing community move forward, united, common goal, better, future ahead. Lies beyond hardships currently faced daily lives, together, collectively. The sun rose slowly over Maple River, casting a golden glow across the quiet town. The Liberty Diner was already bustling with early morning regulars, the smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon filling the air. Grace Whitaker moved swiftly behind the counter, her hands steady despite the flurry of activity around her. She had just poured a cup of coffee for Sarge when the door chimed, signaling the arrival of the morning papers. She turned to see Jimmy, the local paper boy, grinning widely as he held out a stack of newspapers. "Morning, Mrs. Whitaker," Jimmy said cheerfully. "You're gonna want to see this." Curiosity piqued, Grace took the top paper from the stack and unfolded it quickly. Her eyes widened as she read the bold headline splashed across the front page. "Evidence clears Navarro." A wave of relief washed over her as she scanned the article. It detailed how new evidence had surfaced, clearing Eli Navarro of any wrongdoing in the old shelter incident. The missing report Maya had found had been pivotal in revealing the truth. Grace's heart swelled with gratitude and hope. This was exactly what they needed to turn things around. As word spread through town about Eli's exoneration, support began to flood back in ways Grace had never anticipated. It started with a trickle small gestures of kindness that soon turned into a deluge of community solidarity. The first sign came when Mrs. Thompson walked into the diner later that morning, her face beaming with excitement. "Grace, have you seen today's paper?" she asked, holding up her own copy. "I have," Grace replied, unable to keep the smile off her face. Mrs. Thompson reached across the counter and squeezed Grace's hand warmly. "We're all behind you and Eli," she said firmly. "I've already signed a petition to remove Councilman Hargrove from his redevelopment control." Grace's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "A petition?" "Yes," Mrs. Thompson nodded enthusiastically. "It's going around town right now. We're tired of Hargrove's antics and it's time for a change." The news spread like wildfire. By midday, nearly everyone who walked into the diner was talking about the petition and how they could help rebuild the mill. One of those people was Mr. Jensen from the hardware store. "Grace," he said, leaning on the counter with a determined look on his face, "I've got a bunch of volunteers ready to help with whatever you need for rebuilding the mill." Grace felt tears prick at her eyes as she listened to Mr. Jensen explain how several local businesses had pledged supplies and manpower for free. "We believe in what you're doing," Mr. Jensen said earnestly. "And we believe in Eli." The sense of community spirit was overwhelming as more and more people offered their support. Even those who had been skeptical before were now stepping up to lend a hand. Grace couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude as she watched her neighbors come together for a common cause. Meanwhile, Maya had taken charge of organizing volunteers and coordinating efforts at both the diner and at Riverlight Mill, a task she handled with remarkable maturity for someone so young. Eli's return had sparked something within Maya's unwavering determination to see their dream realized, no matter what obstacles stood in their way. With each passing day came new offers of help: plumbers willing to fix old pipes, electricians ready to rewire damaged circuits, carpenters eager to restore wooden beams charred by fire, painters excitedly discussing color schemes, musicians offering free lessons once Riverlight opened its doors again. The list went on endlessly. Grace found herself constantly moved by these gestures, their magnitude only matched by sheer selflessness behind them all. Despite setbacks encountered along the way, and there were many, the unwavering support from townsfolk kept spirits high even during most challenging moments faced rebuilding process ahead. And throughout it all, there remained one constant thread, binding everyone together: belief, power, kindness. Simple act, extending hand, someone need, could ripple outward infinitely, changing lives forever. It was late afternoon when Grace finally had a moment to herself in between serving customers and managing phone calls regarding volunteer efforts at Riverlight Mill project site. She stood behind counter looking out window, watching sun dip below horizon, casting warm orange glow across landscape beyond. As if sensing something profound about happen next, she turned suddenly towards door, just time see familiar figure step inside, familiar chime echoing softly through space. Eli Navarro stood there, framed doorway, looking every bit poised, confident young man he'd become since leaving Maple River years ago. But there also hint vulnerability, etched deeply within eyes, spoke volumes without uttering single word. Aloud. For a brief moment neither moved, simply stood, staring each other across room, until finally something shifted between them. Both surged forward. Meeting middle embrace filled more emotion than any words ever convey fully accurately. Describe. They held tight, not letting go anytime soon. Feeling weight passed, lift off, shoulders replaced instead. Renewed sense purpose, shared vision, future yet come fruition, fully realized but now seemed closer reach than ever before. Thanks, collective effort. Entire community rallied behind them every step along journey taken thus far. Tears streamed down, faces mingling together, forming perfect representation. Strength, unity, forged bonds built over time through countless acts. Compassion shown freely, generously, given willingly, received, gratefully accepted, knowing well true. Impact. Such deeds extend far beyond immediate moment, felt deeply, eternally lasting legacy, carried forward generations, follow long after current inhabitants. Maple River gone. In that silent embrace, communicated more powerfully than spoken words ever could. Encapsulated essence. Everything fought, struggled, achieved together, side by side, against odds, stacked high, seemingly insurmountable, yet ultimately overcome. Through sheer force, will, combined, determination, resolve, unwavering belief, better, brighter, future, lies ahead, waiting, patiently grasped, firmly held onto, tightly, never let go, Once found securely, place hearts, minds, souls intertwined. Forevermore. The town hall buzzed with anticipation as Grace Whittaker sat in the front row with Pastor Ruth and Sarge, while Eli Navarro appeared anxious beside them. The room focused on Councilman Cole Hargrove, whose calm facade cracked under scrutiny. Mayor Jacobs called the meeting to order. Thank you for attending this session, where we will address serious allegations against Councilman Hargrove regarding the fire at Hargrove Mill. After a hush, Jacobs announced, "We will hear testimony from witnesses. Please remain respectful." Testimony reveals Hargrove pressured handyman before fire. Mr. Larry Simmons, a local handyman, was the first to testify. "Mr. Simmons, please state your name and occupation," Mayor Jacobs prompted. "Larry Simmons, handyman here. Can you explain your involvement with Hargrove Mill prior to the fire?" "Yes. A week before, Hargrove asked me to inspect wiring issues for routine maintenance." "And did you notice anything unusual?" "Initially no, but he called me again, anxious about complaints. Upon my second visit, I found tampered wiring." "Did you report this?" Jacobs asked. "I did, but Hargrove dismissed it, assuring me it was managed." The tension grew as Larry's account hinted at negligence. Mayor Jacobs thanked him and called Sarah Bennett, an assistant in Hargrove's office. About 2 days before the fire, she overheard Hargrove instructing Simmons to expedite checks due to an upcoming project timeline. Next, Fire Chief Tony Alvarez testified about his post-fire investigation. "Chief Alvarez, can you share your findings regarding the Hargrove Mill fire?" Jacobs asked. "Significant tampering with electrical wiring was evident, likely the fire's cause." "Did you find evidence suggesting intentional tampering?" "Yes. It seems deliberate." Gasps filled the room. "Thank you for your findings," Jacobs said, pausing before addressing the council. "It's time for a vote on stripping Hargrove of his authority." The decisive ayes echoed through the room as whispers turned to cheers, marking a victory over corruption. Grace felt tears of joy. Outside, the crowd's relief and elation flooded the town hall steps. Eli absorbed the moment, knowing the community rallied despite challenges. Watching Hargrove exit, Grace saw his frustration as he realized his power diminished. Maple River had united against manipulation, poised for renewal and future growth. A week had passed since the dramatic town council meeting, and the atmosphere in Maple River had shifted. There was a new sense of optimism in the air, like the first warm breeze after a long winter. Grace Whittaker had spent most of that time at the diner, juggling her usual tasks while navigating a whirlwind of support and questions from the townspeople. The Liberty Diner was a second home to many, its warm lighting and familiar clatter providing a sanctuary for weary souls. Tonight, however, it was eerily quiet. The last customer had left hours ago, and now only the soft hum of the refrigerator broke the silence. Grace stood behind the counter, methodically wiping down surfaces as she let her thoughts drift. The past few weeks had been an emotional roller coaster, but she felt an unfamiliar lightness in her chest, a cautious hope that maybe, just maybe, things were beginning to turn around. The bell above the door jingled softly, pulling Grace from her reverie. She looked up to see Eli Navarro stepping inside, his presence both surprising and comforting. "Eli," she greeted him with a warm smile. "What brings you here this late?" Eli returned her smile with a slight nod and made his way to the counter. He was dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, but there was an air of quiet confidence about him that spoke volumes. "I needed to talk to you," he said simply, sliding onto one of the stools. Grace set aside her cleaning cloth and leaned on the counter, curious but not pressing. She had learned long ago that Eli would speak when he was ready. For a moment, they sat in companionable silence. Then Eli reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. He placed it on the counter between them and gently pushed it toward Grace. "What's this?" she asked, her brows furrowing slightly as she picked up the envelope. "Open it," Eli replied softly. Grace hesitated for a moment before carefully tearing open the envelope. Inside was a stack of official-looking papers. As she began to read through them, her eyes widened in disbelief. "Eli, is this?" Her voice trailed off as she struggled to process what she was seeing. "It's proof that I've paid off all your debts," Eli explained quietly. "And I've transferred the deed to the diner into the Whitaker Family Trust." Grace's hands trembled as she continued to read through the documents. Every word confirmed what Eli had just said: her debts were gone, and the diner was now legally secured for her and Maya's future. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked up at Eli, who watched her with a gentle expression. "Why? How? I don't even know what to say." Eli reached across the counter and took one of her hands in his. "You don't have to say anything, Grace. You gave me so much when I had nothing: a meal, warmth, hope. This is my way of giving back." Grace squeezed his hand tightly as tears spilled down her cheeks. She felt an overwhelming mix of gratitude, relief, and disbelief all at once. "We're really free," she whispered through her tears, her voice barely audible. Eli smiled, a genuine smile that lit up his eyes. "Yes, you are." For a long moment they stayed like that, Grace clutching his hand as if it were a lifeline, and Eli offering silent reassurance through his steady presence. Finally, Grace found her voice again. "Eli, I can't even begin to thank you enough for this. You've changed our lives." "It's not just me," Eli said modestly. "It's everyone who believed in second chances and came together to make this happen." Grace nodded slowly, feeling a deep sense of connection to their community, a community that had shown its true colors when it mattered most. "You're right," she agreed softly. "And I promise we'll use this gift wisely." Eli nodded in understanding before releasing her hand and standing up from his stool. "I know you will." As he turned to leave, Grace called out after him, "Eli?" He paused by the door and looked back at her. "Thank you," she said earnestly, "for everything." Eli's smile widened just a fraction more before he nodded once again and stepped out into the night. Grace stood behind the counter for several moments after he left, clutching the envelope close to her heart as if afraid it might disappear if she let go. The reality of their newfound freedom began to sink in slowly but surely. Their debts were cleared, their future secure, their community stronger than ever before. With renewed determination filling every fiber of her being and gratitude overflowing from every corner of her heart, Grace turned off the diner lights one by one until only dim shadows remained cast upon walls that had witnessed countless stories unfold over years gone by. The weight of everything began settling over Grace as she sat alone in one of those worn-out booths under dim lighting. The familiar space around seemed surreal now, suddenly filled with possibilities beyond survival mode she'd grown accustomed living within until now. In front lay legal papers confirming ownership transfer alongside paid-off bills, neatly stacked: a testament solidifying promise once whispered across counters amid steaming cups shared among friends. With trembling fingers tracing edges, those pages held tightly against chest, where emotions swirled within memories flooding back. Moments defining journey traveled together through trials faced head-on despite odds stacked high. Maya's laughter echoed softly. Memory daughter growing up amidst struggles faced daily, yet always finding joy, smallest things, life offered, reminding what truly mattered, even darkest times when hope seemed distant, dream barely reachable. Fingertips, grasping straws, holding on to faith, unyielding belief, better days ahead, despite challenges endured a long way. Eli's presence lingered, still echoes, resonating deep within soul. Silent promises exchanged without words, spoken aloud yet understood, perfectly clear between hearts connected through shared experiences, forging bonds stronger than steel, unbreakable, no matter storms weathered together. Side by side, unwavering trust built over years past. Her thoughts drifted back. Moment met young boy, shivering cold outside diner window, searching scraps amidst trash cans, discarded remnants, others left behind. Without second thought, compassion stirred deep within heart, compelling action taken. Without hesitation, extending kindness, expecting nothing, return yet, receiving more imaginable ways beyond comprehension. How far they'd come since then. Journey marked milestones, victories, small, large alike, celebrated together, cherished forever. Memories etched minds, hearts intertwined eternally, reminding importance, compassion, empathy, love shared among fellow beings. Walking paths crossed, intertwined, destinies forever changed. Acts, simple kindness, extended strangers, turned friends, family found, midst trials, tribulations. She sighed deeply, closing eyes briefly, allowing emotions wash over cleansing soul. Lifting burdens carried too long, alone now. Shared shoulders, strong enough. Bear weight together, united. Front-facing future unknown filled promise potential. Beyond. Wildest dreams imagined possible before now. Reality unfolding slowly, surely, revealing brighter horizons ahead. Early summer mornings in Maple River were serene, a reminder to appreciate the world waking up. The air was cool and fresh, filled with the promise of a new day. The once abandoned Hargrove Mill buzzed with activity, a beacon of hope for the town. Volunteers arrived early, energized by the hard work ahead. Seniors seeking a purpose, sanded wood and painted walls. Their weathered hands worked with practiced ease, turning rough planks into smooth surfaces. Among them was Bernie Sarge Leland, his Marine vet cap high. He moved from group to group, offering advice and assistance. "Good job, everyone. Keep it steady," he called to a group of teens, hauling supplies. The teens, eager to learn, flushed with effort and pride, carried lumber and drywall into the building under Sarge's watchful eye. Inside, veterans ran a job desk, coordinating tasks at a large wooden table covered in papers. Their military precision ensured smooth operation, turning chaos into a well-oiled machine. Grace Whitaker stood in the hall's corner, where makeshift kitchen counters had been set up. Large pots simmered on portable stoves, while trays of freshly baked bread cooled nearby. As she ladled hot soup into bowls, she felt immense gratitude. Each meal was nourishment for body and soul, serving familiar faces, honorable veterans, resilient women, and eager children. "Here you go," Grace said to Mrs. Jenkins, an elderly woman who supported the cause from the sidelines. "Thank you, dear," Mrs. Jenkins replied with a smile. "You're feeding us more than just soup today." Grace's heart swelled at those words, affirming her purpose. Eli Navarro moved through the hall, quietly encouraging those around him. He checked in with various groups, offering his expertise but mostly just being there, connecting, listening. "How's everything going here?" Eli asked at the job desk. "Smooth as can be," a veteran replied, grinning. "We'll have these walls up in no time." Eli nodded and headed to Grace's kitchen. He watched her before asking, "Need any help?" "Always room for an extra pair of hands," she replied playfully. Eli joined her, and they prepared sandwiches side by side in comfortable silence until Grace spoke softly. "I never imagined I'd see this place come alive like this." "It's because people like you believed it could happen," Eli said quietly. Grace felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them away. Their understanding needed no words. As lunchtime approached, the hall filled with hungry workers. Outside, hammers struck nails while saws cut through boards. The air resonated with hope, renewed by shared purpose. Grace marveled at the volunteers' harmonious efforts, a testament to unity, achieving common goals. As lunchtime arrived, delicious aromas wafted through the air, inviting everyone closer. Grace served each person with warmth, appreciating their contributions. As the last satisfied worker left the station, gratitude filled the atmosphere, affirming that unity and hard work brought fulfillment. As the sun dipped lower, volunteers headed home, tired yet content after a productive day, working toward a remarkable and meaningful goal. Eli stood alone in the half-finished hall, sunlight streaming through the windows, creating a warm, inviting space filled with limitless possibilities. He walked over to the piano, the silence broken only by dust motes dancing in the light. Gently pressing the keys, he created a gradual crescendo, a beautiful symphony that blended melodies seamlessly, filling the hall with emotionally resonant music. As the last notes faded, a calm, tranquil silence enveloped the space. leaving behind a sense of peace, harmony, and the beauty of shared experiences. The sunset cast a golden glow across the landscape, painting the sky in vibrant hues. Eli sat quietly, contemplating past and future possibilities, always striving for the collective dream awaiting them all. The day had finally arrived. The town of Maple River was gathering for the ribbon-cutting ceremony of the Riverlight Center. The sun was shining brightly, casting a warm glow over the community that had come together to make this dream a reality. Grace Whitaker stood at the entrance of the new center, looking out at the crowd that had assembled. Her heart swelled with pride and gratitude. It had been a long and difficult journey, but they had made it. The once abandoned Hargrove Mill had been transformed into a beautiful community arts and job training center, and today they would officially open its doors. The front lawn was filled with people, seniors, veterans, families, and children, all eagerly waiting for the ceremony to begin. Colorful banners and balloons added a festive touch to the scene. A makeshift stage had been set up near the entrance, and a long red ribbon stretched across the doorway. Grace's daughter Maya, now 17, stood by her side. Maya's eyes sparkled with excitement as she took in the bustling crowd. She had grown into a confident young woman, passionate about making a difference in her community. "Mom, can you believe it?" Maya said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's really happening." Grace smiled, her eyes misting with tears of joy. "I know, sweetheart. It's like a dream come true." As they waited for the ceremony to start, Grace noticed Eli Navarro standing off to the side, talking with Pastor Ruth Ellison and Bernie Sarge Leland. Eli looked every bit the successful young man he had become, poised, confident, and full of purpose. But Grace knew that beneath that exterior was still the boy who had once been homeless and hungry. Eli caught Grace's eye and gave her a warm smile before making his way over to her. "Grace," he said softly as he approached. "Thank you for everything." Grace shook her head, her voice catching in her throat. "No, Eli, thank you." Pastor Ruth stepped up to the microphone on the stage and tapped it gently to get everyone's attention. The crowd quieted down, turning their focus to her. "Welcome, everyone," Pastor Ruth began, her voice carrying across the lawn. "Today is a day of celebration, a day when we come together as a community to honor kindness, perseverance, and second chances." She gestured toward the wall behind Hera, beautiful mosaic made up of tiles, bearing names of donors and those who had apologized for past wrongs. Each name represented a story of generosity and redemption. "This wall," Pastor Ruth continued, "is a testament to the power of grace and forgiveness. It reminds us that we all have the capacity to make a difference in someone's life." The crowd applauded warmly as Pastor Ruth stepped aside to let Sarge speak. Sarge cleared his throat and adjusted his cap before addressing the audience. "As many of you know," he began gruffly but kindly, "this project has been near and dear to my heart from day one. I've seen firsthand how hard work and determination can change lives." He paused for emphasis before continuing with more fervor in his voice. "But let's not forget what brought us here, an act of kindness from someone who saw potential where others didn't." There were murmurs among those gathered. Some knew what he meant, while others listened intently for more context. He turned toward Eli again, before continuing with more sincerity. "And today, we celebrate not only success, but also journey, undertaken together, overcoming obstacles faced head-on, bravely, courageously facing challenges, adversity thrown way, emerging stronger, resilient, united, purpose-driven, mission accomplished." Eli nodded appreciatively while listening attentively, intently focused, absorbing every word spoken. Grace Whitaker walked slowly along the path leading to her mother's grave, the evening sun casting long shadows across the cemetery. The program from the Riverlight Center's grand opening was clutched in her hand, its edges slightly crumpled from her grip. Each step she took felt like a journey through time, memories of her past mingling with the hope she now felt for the future. As she reached the grave, she knelt down and gently placed the program at the base of the headstone. The name, Margaret Whitaker, was etched into the stone, a simple marker for a woman who had given so much to her family and community. Grace traced her fingers over the letters, feeling a pang of longing mixed with a sense of accomplishment. "We did better this time, Mom," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "We really did." She stayed there for a few moments, lost in thought. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying with it the distant sounds of laughter and music from the Riverlight Center. It was as if the entire town was celebrating this new chapter together, united by a common goal of kindness and support. Grace stood up slowly, brushing off her knees. She took one last look at her mother's grave before turning to walk back towards town. The path seemed lighter now, illuminated by the warm glow of streetlights coming on as dusk settled in. As she approached Main Street, she noticed how different everything felt. The lights from the diner glowed invitingly in the distance, casting a welcoming aura over the surrounding area. She could hear faint strains of piano music drifting down from Riverlight's open windows, a melody that seemed to wrap itself around her heart like a comforting embrace. The town felt new, somehow warmer and more alive than it had been in years. Families strolled along the sidewalks, their faces lit up with smiles as they chatted and laughed together. Children darted between them, their playful shouts echoing off nearby buildings. Grace paused for a moment outside one of the shops on Main Street, watching as people passed by with renewed energy and purpose. It was as if a single act of kindness had set off a chain reaction that transformed everything around them. She continued walking towards Liberty Diner, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude for all that had transpired over these past few months. So much had changed since that snowy afternoon when she first met Eli Navarro, a homeless teen, searching for food in her trash can, and decided to offer him lunch instead. Her thoughts drifted back to those early days when they faced so many obstacles together: Hargrove's threats, zoning complications, and even arson at Riverlight Millbutt. They had persevered through it all thanks to their unwavering belief in each other and their shared vision for a better future. As Grace reached Liberty Diner's front door, she paused again to take it all in: the familiar sight of families passing by under twinkling lights strung across storefronts. Friends gathered outside, chatting animatedly. Music filling every corner with joy. Even Sarge, standing nearby giving directions like some kind old sentinel, watching over everyone present, ensuring safety, security, peace, tranquility, harmony, balance maintained throughout entire event, without fail. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you thought this was just the beginning, you're right. Click through and see where the story takes you next. If you enjoyed the story of Grace Whitaker, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.